All right, what's up, everybody? This is another live stream of Champagne Sharks. I'm Vita Star. Along with me in this stream, we have Two Black and Terrell from the Black Myths podcast, which is a really dope podcast. We just actually interviewed you guys on our podcast, and that's going to come out soon. And so that's when you're going to go even more in depth about what you guys do and the importance of changing the conversations that we have been passing down from generation to generation, and also
Right.
carrying conversations we're seeing in media today, right?
Right.
So thank you guys so much for joining us. Guys, you say what's up to the people.
What up? What up? Yes. Two Black, poet, spoken word poet, researcher, podcaster. Yeah. What up, y'all? I never go live, so this will be interesting. But
every time we do this, I always forget. Like, dang, I should probably come up with a decent intro. But real, as Joe was, or I'm sorry, as Black would say, you're their hood nigga for disposal.
I do not. I say resident hood nigga. I do not say hood nigga for disposal.
Hood nigga for disposal.
I ain't never said that, man.
I'm just messing with
Don't put that on my name. Like, nah, I say resident hood nigga. That's the running joke.
Terrell, I'm me.
Yeah, that's all that's needed.
You said you're deep.
I'm me.
Oh,
Deep
Not deep.
sometimes. I can be deep sometimes.
you might be deep. I don't know. If you're a poet, you better be deep.
Most poets aren't that deep, but that's
I
another
know.
conversation.
Yeah. Granted, I haven't written a piece in a while.
Huh?
I haven't written a piece in a while. I've been thinking about some stuff, but I haven't wrote nothing in a while.
I just finally wrote one in the bit. I had wrote it. I just put it in Hood. It's in Hood Communist. I just put it in there last week.
I know I've been meaning to sit down and read it. You
The
gotta
first
sit down
Black.
and read it.
I need to do a video on that, but my brother needs to give me a haircut before I put that video out. But I might put that out tomorrow because it's the last day of Black History Month, and I was kind of like, I was getting at some of the Black History Month contradictions in that poem.
So let's give a shout out to the couple GM Playfair on Twitch and iSound Info on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us in the chat. Everyone else, please feel free to join us in the chat. Are there any Black myths or just myths and things that you know of that we've been spreading in our community that needs to be addressed? And they could be fun things, silly things. They can be serious things, whatever those things are. I know for me, my grandma always had something. At first, I would believe some of the things she would say. Like I heard about the a lot of people might have heard this one. If you go outside and you play in the hot sun and you come in and drink some water, you'll have a heart attack.
Yeah, that's a bit dense.
Like they would tell the story about how they had a friend who, and I've heard story plenty of times, not just from my grandmother, but like somebody would go outside and work hard. Maybe they're mowing the lawn in the hot sun, and like basically trying to tell you to drink room temperature water. So you come inside and you drink cold water, and allegedly you have a heart attack. It's not really true, but this.
I've heard that
sounds like a superstition.
For you, but
you said you heard of what?
I heard room temperature water is best for you, but not what you said.
So what I think happens, especially with like, a lot of old wives' tales, so to speak, is that they just want you, they're trying to get you to do something, so they just make up some shit. And you start passing it down thinking it's like that gospel truth. So sometimes
I think some things, I don't know, I think because like America is a very lowbrow culture. Lowbrow is in, it doesn't have like a complex way of understanding context. So something that may have been like a metaphor or an allegory or a story like generations before, for some reason it gets taken literal today.
Right.
And we come from cultures where storytelling, oracles, that was the thing. And I don't know if everybody actually believed the story literally, but it was a story that gave you like a certain like value system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of these superstitions were that, and they just kind of got passed down as we became more integrated. It became more of like that literally happened, like some story about a cat walking behind you is gonna kill you or some shit, you know, like that. As opposed to that being like some symbolic like narrative, it's like, nah, just the cat's gonna kill you. You know?
Yeah, that makes me think of a few things. Like, you know, there's one about like not sweeping on somebody's foot. That's bad luck, apparently. I accidentally swept somebody's foot before, and they flipped the fuck out on me. I mean, they were dead serious. And I had never heard of it until I Googled it. And it's actually a real superstition that if you sweep somebody's feet, I guess it's like bad luck. And she started spitting on the broom, like literally spitting on it.
Wow.
I guess that was supposed to counteract the curse. I have no clue.
I mean, I know if you step on a nigga's shoe and they're fresh, that's a fight ready to happen.
That's yeah.
But that's not a myth though.
Wait, what's not a myth?
I'm saying if you step on a nigga's shoes and we don't really know each other like that can go wrong. You know.
No, I'm telling you.
But that's not a myth. That's just like real life. So
yeah, well, facts. New Way said a relative told my mom that if she exercised while breastfeeding, she'd churn her milk into butter. Wow. I hope your mom.
Somebody try that? Did they try that shit? So
doctors actually often recommend exercising, especially in the early beginning stages of pregnancy. So that's interesting. Did your mom? Hopefully, your mom didn't believe that shit. Please tell me she didn't believe it. Yeah,
that's funny. No, so most of the myths that we try to debunk. Of course, they're more serious stuff. Like the recent one we just did was the Willie Lynch letters, COINTELPRO, black on black crime, the perfect victim, and all that. So they're usually a little more serious. So it is a little relief to hear some of the the random, especially. I think one thing we may, I don't know, we might talk it over about doing something about blacks and superstitions like this.
That would be a good one. Because I think that would be a little bit more fun. And from what I understand, some of it is rooted in like voodoo or like some old ancient practices. And some things. What'd you say?
It'll be a lot of research, but we can talk about it.
Yeah. But,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, I mean, our main like program is like in the description, it's like socio-political nature. So we normally have rules. I think I talked about this on the full podcast. I won't go as in depth on it, but we got rules where it's like it's got to have a material impact on your life, like the myth itself. If it has to have it has to be quantifiable on some level. Like we have to be able to prove this is a thing, and it has to be widespread. Like this is something a lot of people believe in. So if it's something that only Terrell believes, like if Terrell believed that, I don't know, one shoulder is bigger than the other of black people or some shit, I ain't never heard that before, right? So that wouldn't be something we would spend our time on. If it's an opinion, like Beyonce, I think I said this on the pod, Beyonce faked her pregnancy. That was actually a thing years ago on the internet.
Yeah, I remember that.
But that's not real. But I'm saying, even if it was, like, that doesn't have a material impact. Like, that doesn't.
It just sounds like a silly internet.
Yeah, that's just gossip. So I'm saying, like, disproving that doesn't help us with fight any type of oppression or anything. If all you do is believe, if you're trying to disprove stuff like that, so we try to target myths that have real material impact on our day-to-day lives, like believing that slavery was all built by one guy at one time in a letter. That's a real problem. Like, what I mean?
So what are some of, I was going to just ask, what are some of the things that you try to highlight for people without making it seem like you're demeaning them? So if you have a way to try to highlight just the facts and the key points, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, and I even say this when I write poetry, like it's always about attacking concepts, not people, or attacking ideas or like a certain guiding logic, not the people themselves. So it's not really about whether you believe it or not. Because even there are things that even for us, we knew, it was a myth, but we learned way more once we did the research to actually do the show. right? So like, I knew the Willie Lynch letter was fake for a long time, but Terrell did too. But studying for that and learning like how bad it was, and then studying specifically what slavery really was, and that there was actual slave masters that published journals that break down slavery on a much more detailed scale. There's slave narratives. You learn like after that, you like, damn, the Willie Lynch letter is really bad. It was bad when you first started, but it was really bad after that. So it's like, we don't know everything. So I think that's another way we approach it, where we don't approach it like we already knew all this shit and we're just these smart niggas telling y'all what's to know. We're like, nah, we didn't know, or we only knew this much, or we're learning just like you know, and it's not your fault necessarily that you might have believed in it, or that you just don't know about it at all, right? Like that's not, there's no education system that sets a lot of these things straight. Like propaganda in America is higher than it is anywhere else, I would argue.
Yeah, and I think that the internet exacerbates all of it, because you have all these publications that seem like they might be legit because they're constantly referenced. And it's, you know, and so you start just believe, like the New York Post always posts some bullshit like every day. It's mostly tabloid, right?
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, they're popular. People reference them all the time.
Yep.
The same thing with TMZ. And the other thing people don't understand about media, I worked in media for about maybe almost 15 years now. And one of the things that people have to understand is the story is always framed to make you believe something. Like that, and it's very intentional. There's a reason why they don't tell you all the facts, or they use the words that they use to describe something, right? Because it's supposed to evoke an emotional response in you that frames how you see it. It makes you believe whatever version they're telling you. And if you don't have a ability to like do your own research or question things, or you know, that critical thinking shit is important, right? Because you have to be able to research and realize, okay, this doesn't add up. This is some holes in this. How does this fit here if this is what happened? You know, and the thing, there's a lot of great information out there, like you pointed out. So if you can hear that motorcycle. But I literally live in South Central. You can't tell by all the bars. But you know, like the Willie Lynch letter is bullshit, but there's actual documents from slave owners. There's actual slave narratives, right? There are things that actually exist, to the point where I almost think the Willie Lynch letter is a distraction from pulling out these other stories.
Right. Yeah, that's the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems with myths in the context that we study them, at least the ones that are really harmful, is that it confuses you about the issue, right? And so if you want to do something about the issue, your understanding of it is so flawed that you're going to do something that puts you right back in the space you were trying to get away from, you know, because your understanding of it is off. So if you think that black capitalism is going to work and we can just spend our money together, it sounds great on its face. Like it sounds like black unity, whatever that means. It sounds like, you know, we can have some control over the situation. But then you read a book like The Myth and Propaganda, Black Buying Power by Dr. Jared Ball, you start to really study econ, or you read some of the work of Sandy Darity, and you realize like there's no money that black people actually have to rotate anyway. And then you start studying capitalism, and you realize that the relationships that are set up are naturally exploitative, even if the black person is the one owning it. You still can get paid $7.25 an hour from that black person. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll improve the overall community. It might improve that business owner. So a lot of these things sound great on their face, but if you try to like be like, okay, we're going to support black businesses, and a lot of us do that, and I do it too. But if I don't do that as a ultimate solution to the problem, you know, just with that understanding of it. But a lot of us don't have that understanding, so we end up investing a lot of energy and time in things that don't actually fix the problem, right? Exactly. And it's not because we're dumb or because we're ignorant. Well, we're ignorant, but not purposefully ignorant, right? Not because we're backward or our culture is off. Nah, it's just like we get propaganda like everybody else. And I love what we're trying to do is just debunk a lot of that propaganda. But we don't blame anybody for that. Now, if you knowingly know these things, that's a different conversation.
You know? I might blame a few people, but yeah.
I'm saying if you out here and you know better and you just out here just grifting, or you know,
like you said, sometimes I hate when people say the media because you never specify what the medium or the
right,
media is that you get it from. But sometimes us in media,
exactly a blood raven. We'll go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say exactly. Sometimes us in media, we don't know everything, so we just reference what we do know. And you said with like Joe said with Black said with black capitalism and everything, white black and all that. I can hear radio ads all day about we're supporting this black business this week, that black business this week.
Oh, right.
And I'm like, yeah, that's good, and I'm not knocking them for it because that's probably the best that they know. But when you gain more knowledge and understanding, you start to think, okay, you know what? Yeah.
You know what it's the equivalent of to me? It's the equivalent of people having GoFundMe so they can pay their hospital bills. Right?
Yeah.
We donate because we know that this person needs it. We know it's going to help that person. But does it address the issue around healthcare and healthcare access and healthcare services? No, right? So I kind of look at it like that. Yeah, it doesn't do much, but it's like at this point, what do we have? Right? It's like catching the baby downstream. You guys don't know that reference. It's a sociological reference. And for the listeners, people watching, basically it's the concept of looking at, if there's babies coming down the stream and there's, you're at the bottom of the stream, you can save the babies at the bottom of the stream, but at some point you're going to have to go up there and figure out where these babies are fucking coming from, right? How did they get there? Who's sending them down the stream? What is the system that was created that we continuously have kids, these babies coming down the stream? Yeah, at the same time, we got to pull the babies out the fucking stream.
Right. I was reading some Mao Zedong before I got on here, and this is what was the essay called? It's about contradictions, and he has a good point in there just about what we call primary contradictions. And then like what's called a secondary contradiction. And this contradiction is just kind of demystify that. It's like if the main issue is that causes a lot of this inequality is capitalism, right? Let's just say that's the issue in the case of this for the conversation, then you need to address that as that's the primary contradiction, is that you can't have a system that ultimately exploits people for profit and concentrates all the wealth at the top and expect there to be an equitable world. It's a contradiction.
Right.
Now, other contradictions occur out of that, right? Like people might become bad spenders with their money because they are under a society that encourages consumerism. People might be, harmful towards each other because they're in a society that encourages competition and stepping on the next person. Like all of those other contradictions occur, but the primary contradiction that stirs all that, to your point about the babies coming down the river, is capitalism. So if you don't address that, you fight over all these other contradictions.
Yep.
That undergirding primary contradiction is always going to be there. And I think for us, what we often do is we're fighting like second and third and 10th level contradictions. We're not dealing with that one at the primary root of a lot of things. And I mean, I'm not saying capitalism is the root of everything either. I'm just using that as an example. But I'm saying when we talk about a lot of stuff that Black people have going on internally, there are contradictions where I can't say I love Black women and I only want to date light-skinned girls. Like that's a problem. But like when that becomes a primary contradiction, versus that being like one of the symptoms of it, or one of the third or fourth level ones, but we argue like it's the primary one,
right?
It confuses people. So even with coming back to myths, we have to be able to like clarify. Like we always try to do that. We don't literally say this is the primary contradiction, but I'm saying we try to clarify that in our analysis. Like this is kind of the root of where this is spawning from, and then these are some of the offshoots of it. Because usually a myth is just a symptom of something larger,
Exactly. Were you gonna say something, Terrell?
No, I was just doubling back to like when you had asked the question, basically like not to make us seem like the know-it-alls. Like
right.
we definitely don't know it all. And like one of my I guess parts in the podcast and everything in the show is I try to come from a point where I don't know. Because Joe, like I tell you, like it's stuff like we'll do a myth, and I'm like, this was y'all believing? Okay, why are they believing this? And I'm really like curious. I want to know more. So then we'll go into studying, we'll go into research, and we'll do the show, and if we have a guest on there, I might be quiet just because I'm listening. Like I want to know for myself. Like with the Willie Lynch letter, like yeah, I knew it was fake, but aside from like the language of the letter and a few other things, the in-depth response that we got from Razul and everything, like him breaking everything down and him like I'm just like, yo, let me shut up. I'm just gonna listen.
Yeah, all I got is questions. I ain't even got no commentary. Like someone just asking questions.
Yeah.
There's two things, both points that you guys both made that really stick out to me. And the reason why I truly appreciate your podcast is one, and I'm glad you're on here so people can see for themselves. Y'all some real motherfuckers. Like y'all not some corny ass academic that's trying to like look down on people and use that elitist academic language. Like y'all talk like regular ass people. You know what I mean? So I appreciate that. So that's the first thing I realized.
Transition. She like that we niggas.
Okay. I didn't know if you were cool with me calling you that, so I wasn't gonna say that.
Nah, yeah, definitely.
So I wanted to say y'all some real ass niggas, and I wanted them to know. You know.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. But I don't like to call people shit they don't, because I don't know y'all like that, and you're gonna be like, don't call me a nigga on my own stream, and I feel stupid, so I'm good. But
no, you good. Nah, we don't.
But the thing is, the reason why I want to highlight that is because you're also highlighting that you're learning, right? You're also here to learn. You're not trying to look down on anybody because you don't know everything. You're still trying to figure these things out. And even then, in the little that you do know, how in depth do you really know it, right? So I think that's a really important point to highlight, that y'all real people. It's like when I teach trauma-informed care. And one of the things I always try to highlight is like, hey, I'm not perfect. I have issues too. So I teach a parenting class. I teach trauma-informed nonviolent parenting, right? Nice. And I also teach about empathy and understanding what that is biologically as well as emotionally, right? And I tell them, say, look, you're not going to be perfect. There's no perfect parent on earth. There are going to be days you're going to cuss your kid out. Like you might have a day like that. But the important part is that you go back and repair. I'm not perfect either. So I talk about my growth, the times that I fucked up doing shit,
Right.
Because, and even till this day, I'll give people examples of things that happened literally the same day or the day before. Like, man, this morning I fucked up and I wasn't using empathy and I got cussed out by my homegirl, whatever.
Right.
We're all still learning. And, we're real people still learning we're learning with you, right? The second thing I appreciate is that you take the conversation from just being about, like kind of how you talking about the little things underneath and ignoring the big thing that's causing it all. That's what your podcast does, right? So you're actually oftentimes connect those conversations to something bigger. Well, what's the bigger picture here? What is the system here that's encouraging this? So it's not just you're encouraged to be a consumer. It's not just you're encouraged to be competitive and aggressive with each other. There's a system that's encouraging it. And how does that system benefit? And who does it benefit? It surely ain't you. But the way that you guys can connect those dots as real ass niggas, it makes your show academic without being academic, without me having to talk to a fucking Harvard professor.
No, I appreciate that. It's probably the best compliment we've ever gotten. But
I was when she said real ass nigga, I was like, we good.
Yeah. We don't
really, got my strike. Good.
Yeah, we don't even really be thinking about it, but I appreciate that because I mean, it is different in the sense that we'll deal with stuff that I guess would be considered academic in certain circles, and we do talk to academics. I think the academics we talk to usually are grounded in being down to earth
people like Dr. CBS.
So we ain't talking to no. We rarely talk to somebody that I mean, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there's only like one interview maybe where I would have been like, maybe we shouldn't have done that. But everybody else, like, I feel like we get good interviews. But yeah, like we're regular people. Nobody's an academic. We might have academic adjacent in the sense that we know those people, right? Or we talk to those folks, but we're not in that space. And I mean, it's just like, I don't know, like it comes from the show itself, just comes out of like trying to understand the world you're in, and trying to understand that for the purpose of doing something about it. Like, it's very simple, and everybody does that shit. Even if you do things I don't agree with, or vice versa, everybody's trying to make sense of the world they're in and figure out a move to make in it. Like, everybody's trying to do that, even if it's not like this big systemic whatever. Like, everybody's like looking around at their conditions and being like, what's the move I need to make to get in a better situation? And I mean, like, everybody's doing that. So we're doing the same thing. Like, it's not some highfalutin shit. Like, we're all trying to just figure that out. We just feel like to do that, you need to study. You need to have like references. You need to be able to have like some grounding and scholarship to understand the world around you. That's not the only way to understand it, but I'm saying we think that's important. But it's not like this. I mean, it's like we're debunking myths, but we're also trying to demystify like how we understand problems, and that problems aren't these like abstract things that are just in the sky somewhere that just fall down on us. Like, there's actually connections that we can make, and then we can target those things. If we can do that, then and that's so it's like we were talking about. I think it was after we recorded, we were talking about religion and cults and shit. But like, one of my biggest issues with religion isn't even like whether people believe in a God or not. I don't even really care. It's that sometimes it mystifies problems. So some shit is just the devil. We're talking about like old wives' tales, but like that's the shit I grew up on. Like, it's just the devil, you know. And I ain't got no way of explaining why it's the devil. Somebody just told me that shit was the devil, so now this shit is the devil. And then I have no clue on how to even deal with it. If I have a feeling about something and I'm told it's a bad feeling, then I should just see myself as the devil. I don't even know how to reconcile. So when you talk about empathy, I don't even know how to find that shit because it's just the devil.
Right.
So even beyond religion, like, myths do that. Myths give you this kind of like fantastical, abstract explanation of things to where you feel almost you feel like powerless on doing anything about it, or that's just the way it is, or whatever, right? So,
that's a good point. It's funny because sometimes people say things, and you in particular said this even after the podcast we did. People say things that I connect with 100%. And I'm like, yes, say that. That's exactly what my experience was. More specifically, there was a demon. So I've told you guys on the podcast and also on here before, guys, I was raised a version of Pentecostal Christianity that was actually a cult. And a lot of times I even have to remind myself that certain things aren't bad just because I was taught that. Like, I'm not a good. I can't dance. I'll only dance if I'm drunk enough, right?
I can't dance either, and unfortunately, I don't drink, so I'm even worse, probably.
I've been trying to get him to take a shot for years.
But growing up, though, my dad made me believe that dancing was, too sexual, and you go to hell, and you won't get a husband because you're a whore, and my life was here's why I teach trauma-informed care. But so I had these beliefs around everything. I believe that if you so much as kissed a boy, you were gonna get pregnant and be shunned away from society, right? So these things can like literally affect how you see yourself and how you see the world around you. Now, in a cult, the purpose of telling you that shit is to isolate you, right? And keep you away from the world, because things were worldly. We were also talking things were too worldly. And worldly meant that it was not of Christ, and it was not of, our particular brand of Christianity. And when you have things like that, it basically blocks your ability to see the world as it is. It completely transforms, in coming out of it is one of the toughest experiences. There's only a few other experiences in my life that I had to come out of that was extremely difficult, and that was one of them. Because when you lose that, what you've always believed, now you're in the real world. It's like, well, what do I hold on to now, right? It's just kind of like,
everything collapses.
The stories that I was told my whole life.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was just saying everything collapses. I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. No, that's one thing I always get from like the podcast is like, okay, so not to stay on religion, but it's always weird when people say that they're this denomination, they were raised this, that, and cultish type stuff. Like I was raised non-denominational, and a lot of stuff that we can sympathize with a lot of things, but I don't know. Ours was just kind of toned down. It's like you're not of the world.
We thought y'all were the devil.
You're not of the world, but you're in the world, so you need to understand this world.
Yeah, we were taught that your kind of churches were of the devil.
So, but even non-denominational churches, if we would, I don't want to go too far into this because we could do a whole live stream on this shit. But
this is casual. We can talk about whatever the fuck we want.
But I'm saying even non-denominational churches become denominations. Because I grew up in a non-denominational church, and we didn't have the infrastructure that a denomination has as far as belonging to like a sector of churches, but the way that things function. I mean, my parents are very much different now than they were then. Was very cult-like, and this is something that they've admitted to. So this isn't me making some shit up. And so to your point, Vita, when you were talking about it blinds you, or I don't want to say blind, but it erases. Yeah, it limits your ability to even see things because it just cuts off certain pathways. Right. So if I tell you something's the devil, like you don't even go down that road. If I tell you this is so, there's a bunch of shit you don't look at, so you just get this really tunnel vision. And then anything outside of it, either I don't want to touch it because I think I'm going to die, or I'm going to be judged, or there's all these consequences that are attached to even thinking about this shit because you've been programmed with that. So breaking out of that, it can be scary because there's not any support often.
Have you guys had pushback against the myths that you guys have broken?
I mean, not really.
No, nobody's came to me about nothing.
I mean, there's been. Not really. I mean, there's been people can't. I mean, the fact again, we always pick something that's quantifiable, so we're never doing opinions, Right. So you can't really tell me we're wrong, but people will be like, I've had people say, like with the Willie Lynch letter, well, there's still some real shit inside of it. That's why we spent an extra hour destroying that part of the argument too on the episode. But like, there's still some. There's still some.
And it was.
Yeah, we usually are about an hour-ish. We were 2 hours on that episode. We were just like, we're putting this to bed. But like, usually it's people who would be like, well, I mean, like even when we did Black People Died to Vote, like Black people did not die to vote. Like when you read, and we read, like I'm like, read what they said. Don't take my words. So we went through like SNCC and Ella Baker, since they were on the front lines, like they were the case study. And just like Ella Baker said, we don't sit in for a hamburger. Like that's not what Black people were sitting in restaurants for, so they could get hamburgers or cheeseburgers. Black people didn't die to vote. Like nobody dies for a means to an end. Right. Like, nobody dies for the means itself. Right. People die because of whatever the end was: freedom, liberation, etc. So people would get mad at the semantics, be like, well, technically they did die registering to vote. I'm like, that's not dying to vote though.
Yeah, that's not the same thing as white people killing them because they were voting.
No, like that's not the same. If you went to get some food for your child and you somehow ran into something at the restaurant, we wouldn't say you died. You know what I'm saying? You died for McDonald's.
Right. Or
like you didn't die for McDonald's. Like you died to go in to get your kid some food and you really died because you loved your kid and you wanted to feed your child. Right. That's what you really died doing. You didn't die because of hamburgers or restaurants. Like that was just that was something you were doing to feed your child, and that was just a symbol of it. So I have had people that take issue with the semantics because they can't argue the point, so they'll get into the semantics of it. Like, well, technically, or I mean, if you think about it, or but that's all I've really heard.
I have some questions also to that. I was not thinking about other stuff. Do you guys typically research the arguments for or against the myth that you're going to talk about?
Do we typically research the myth?
Like research the other arguments. People who say they did, or they count. They're countering the people that that have the facts. But
yeah, like I mean, yeah, like with the Willie Lynch letter in the actual episode, we quoted all different people throughout the years who have actually upheld that Willie Lynch is a real thing. Like in 1995, Minister Louis Farrakhan read a good portion of the speech at the Million Man March, for his speech. In The Great Debaters, Denzel goes on a whole monologue about Willie Lynch. Even though at the time of the movie was made, or the time of the time period in the movie was in the 1930s, 1940s, somewhere in there, and there's no reference of the letter at all in any history until 1970s. So I don't know how a character from the 1940s would be referencing it, but so we'll reference that, or because I don't ever want to turn anything into a straw man. We don't want to do that and turn so we always try to. This is what the case is. This is what we're debunking. This is what they say it is.
Here's the facts.
Here it is, and you can take it for what you want. But like, there's always, I think, I'm just thinking back. We always try to uphold like, what's the argument? Like we did an episode on we need the police. The myth being we need the police, and you have to explain to people like, okay, what when people say they need the police, like, what's that really mean? Then that means you think that the police keep you safe, and so we dealt with the issue of safety and how they don't actually do that, and they weren't designed to do that, and So
you kind of address what the people are actually saying. So so you do research it, but it's kind of like also the reason why you're doing the podcast or that episode is because people already have this belief, or they're saying these things that aren't factual. In addition, in a way to defend, let's say, the Willie Lynch letter.
Right. And I mean, every argument is different. So we are proposing an argument, but I guess my position on that would be that all of it, like, nothing's really neutral. I don't believe in neutrality, so I don't think it's a thing. So it's like, if you're pushing that the Willie Lynch letter is real, then you have to argue the opposite, but it's not an argument as an opinion. It's just here's a series of facts that justify why my opinion, or my claim, I should say, that this is wrong, right? Like, I mean, Terrell, I don't know, you probably have a different perspective on it, but
no, even when we go into the myths and everything, like, people who are already skeptic of it are like, well, technically that they'll throw the buts and the technicalities and stuff out there, and after you've listened to the whole podcast, you've looked at the facts that we've presented and everything, a lot of that just kind of gets washed away. And that's when you get down to those, well, technically, and then it's just kind of like, okay, you just argue just to argue, and we've already addressed it. It's nothing we really want to, like, what was it? Me and Black were talking one day just about, do we like you said, do we need the police? And Black brought up the point, like, if you get stabbed today, if I get stabbed right outside my door, what did the police do to keep me safe?
Right.
And I had to present, like, I was talking to an associate, I'll say. I was talking to an associate, and he was like, well, the police keep me safe. I was like, you believe that because you live in a nice neighborhood and they patrol. But if I walked up and stabbed you right now, what did the police do? If I shot you right now, what did the police do to keep you safe? All they did was come and pick up your body.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, even if, and that's if they show up. But you know what I mean?
That's if they show up.
Yeah, that's if they show up. Right. Like, it's
well,
an
that's a good response time.
Yeah. And it's also like with that particular myth, it's also sometimes, I think, kind of to this point at the bottom, people embracing things they find valid, or I think sometimes because, I think sometimes we're just imprecise with our language. So it's always a challenge of not trying to nitpick too much on what people say. Like, sometimes people might say something and it's like, that technically might be wrong, but it's not worth a show. It's because it could be cleaned up in like a sentence. So I don't, but I'm saying, so something like we need the police, I think is an imprecise statement, really, because, and that's what we try to attack, because what you're really saying is you need safety, and your idea of safety is attached to the police.
I love that.
Right. So that's how we try to argue it. Like, so we argued from this perspective that it was not built for safety, and it's never provided safety. So that's what I mean by it has to be. You still have to make an argument because you have to frame it in a way that connects. But it's like people are imprecise in their language often, so they'll say something like, "Yeah, man, we need the police. If we don't have the police, then everybody gonna be shooting each other." It's like, well, everybody already is shooting each other, or people choose not to shoot each other for other reasons that has nothing to do with the police because I might care for this person, or I have enough money and I'm already secure enough to not do that because I have something to live for. Like, there's a lot of reasons why people don't commit crimes. That has so-called crimes that has nothing to do with the police. So safety comes from a lot of different ways. Safety comes from having a secure life. Safety comes from having loving friends and family. Safety comes from a lot of different means that are not just whether somebody can show up in the middle of the night with a gun. You know, so we attack that idea of safety.
You know what I love about that, and you guys could be like in a lot of the classes that I teach, because that's exactly the way, in my opinion, the best way to get to someone is to understand what they're really saying.
Right.
What is the need that they're highlighting underneath? Right. And you highlighted the need for safety, and that's pretty much the most common one, right? That's one of those needs that's running in through us 24/7. And the thing about when you have a need and it's not being met is you begin to do engage in unhealthy or unsafe behaviors as a way to achieve it. So you might think, oh, it's important that I have the police, but really you're creating more unsafety because you're so afraid of what maybe the media has told you. Oh, there's a lot of Black people moving into my neighborhood. Now I'm afraid. So now in that fear, I'm going to, do something that's gonna actually make me more unsafe by increasing the amount of police in my neighborhood. Now they're attacking my son when he's, just trying to get to the bus stop, or they're picking up my son because they think he's a gang member and dropping him off in another neighborhood. The kind of shit they do out here. So, you think that you're keeping your community safe because they're telling you, oh, this crime is rising, somebody's getting shot, more people are moving in over here, these immigrants are coming over here, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And then now you're all afraid, and now you're doing this irrational thing, like voting in favor of things that are against your interests, because you're operating under that need for fear. The thing about needs, and they go beyond even just your physical safety, which is what you highlighted, right? It's also just feeling secure. Mm-hmm. Am I able to pay my bills, this coming month? There's a sense of safety in knowing that you have a job that pays you enough to cover your rent, right? So these things are actual biological, neurological needs, and they go beyond just your physical. It's more than just water and eat and sleep, right? Or whatever the people seem to think your only needs are. People argue with me all day about what needs are. They don't even talk about the actual biological, neurological need for affection.
Yep.
The need for appreciation, the need for connection. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? These are actual needs that you have. A need for clarity, a need for beauty. These are a need for expression. All these things are driving your behaviors. And so I think what myths do sometimes is they kind of give you, like you were saying earlier, it gives you something to hold on to. It gives you this story. It gives you something that, okay, I might not really know, but this sounds like this will work. It sounds like this will work for me. Yeah.
It's like if you just research, look it up, or even hey, watch our podcast.
It's a great podcast, guys.
Shameless plug. Watch our podcast.
The Black Myths podcast. Don't have shameless. The Black Myths podcast. In fact, take a moment. Hold your thoughts, Terrell. Take a moment right now. Go on your phone. Go to whatever app you go to listen to your podcast. Look up the Black Myths podcast. They're the only one. I looked it up myself. So go ahead to put that in your. I don't want to name out the companies, but whatever you use, find them right now. Subscribe. That's your homework, or not even your homework. That's your classwork. Do that shit right now. Okay, continue, Terrell.
Thank you.
Real quick, you're best finding that on audio right now because we've been kind of lazy on our YouTube. So you look it up on any of your audio podcast sites. But go ahead.
There we go.
Yeah, so like even with us, like, debunking these myths, now you don't have that to hold on to anymore. Now you got a little bit of source information where you can go and do your own research and go and find out stuff. There's been a few times where we'll be, especially if it's an episode that I'm not on and it's something that I might not even know nothing about, I'm like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go look this up, or that'll give me something to look up. I like to watch a lot of YouTube videos, so because I'm at work.
My God, that's the best thing ever.
like I'll be at work and I can sit and listen with my headphones on while I do my stuff, and I can listen to these videos going off of what we discussed in the podcast or what Black and the other co-hosts have said in here, and I can look that stuff up for myself. Like for example, COINTELPRO.
We still haven't even done that one technically. That's in the canon. That's another conversation. But go ahead. You said you looked it up.
Yeah. From the notes that we had, I was looking at COINTELPRO and I was like, okay, I don't know a lot about this. So sometimes I'll I'll write it down or whatever, like next week look into this and just, watch a YouTube video or something about it. Just so you get a little understanding, so I can know I did my research, and I don't have to rely on other myths or other things. I've done my research, so then even when I go to the show or whatever, I come from a point of understanding now, at least a little bit. Mm-hmm. And like I said, one of my parts with the show, I like to be the one that's curious and that asks questions and stuff, because I'm coming from a position of just your average person.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I love that.
Like I want to make sure that I can be, and yeah, I was smoking and drinking on camera and everything, just so because people relate to it. I guess like my cousin called me out. He was like, "Yo, this nigga a fool. He really lightened up his black."
Yeah, it really happens. Yeah.
I mean, they see me do that shit on here a million times. So
I'm like, that's good, because I want you to be able to relate to this. Like, this isn't just some academic thing. You don't have to be the smartest nigga in the world. Mm-hmm. It's just you taking a little initiative to go out, read. We've already debunked the Willie Lynch letters. Now, go to the podcast, watch the episode, and look at the other examples that we get if you want to learn more about the tactics of the slave master.
Yeah, right. Which are all there
too, so people can go to the resources. Whatever you mentioned. And like you said, one of my favorite things to do is actually to smoke and go down the YouTube documentary rabbit hole. That's like that's like my jam. That and watching that and discovering like really, really old Black movies from like the 40s. So it's like my other thing. But you can learn so much just by researching it. You can start to debunk shit yourself. You can start to compare, like, wait a minute, this person said that and this person said this. Let me see what the truth is, because this sounds a little funny, or you know what I mean? Like, it takes time, but if you're like me, you just enjoy doing that shit. It's not a problem. But it's just something like your show can give people at least, even at the very least, a starting point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We never claim to be like the definitive. This is the definitive breakdown of whatever, and you don't need to learn nothing else, because we told like I don't really even like when authors do that. I mean, I read a lot of books, but I hate when I'm reading a book where it's like, even if they didn't explicitly say it, it's like you're trying to, this is the definitive biography on so-and-so or whatever. Like, you don't ever need to know anything else, because this book is the Bible on this subject or this person. And rarely does that book ever get written, because it's just, information is always unfolding, times change, language changes, we need different ways to understand and relate to things. So we're always just like, this is a contribution to the struggle, this is not the expansive breakdown of it. But like, I mean, I don't know, we for us, I guess it's like trying to find I don't know, it's like the myths, like I said, myths often are misguiding. And I know for me, even in my own life, there's been things I believed in that like really fuck some shit up, like like really cause some real problems for me, in how I moved in the world. And it wasn't. And sometimes it's like there's like factual myths, but then there's like these deeper like philosophical, ethical understandings of the world that gets us in trouble, And it's like, when we're talking about the Black capitalism thing earlier, it's not just this whole like economic argument that means it doesn't work, but also what happens is this kind of this understanding that it's individual Black people and their behavior and the way they move, as that's the problem. Like, that's an ethical problem. That's not just about a fact, like a hard data or hard science. That's an ethical problem where you think that black people are backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think black people are backwards, the way you behave, it's like when that's how you see the world, when that's how you move, like that colors everything. If you think black people are backwards, I'm speaking mainly about other black folks in this case, but really anyone that thinks that black people are backwards, policies that get designed because black people are backwards are often backwards, right?
Not just backwards, inhuman.
Yeah. Because it's like you think these
save animals anyway.
Yeah, these people need to be reformed, or they're not worth anything. So, like you said, lock them up. So that's inherently like a philosophical issue too. Like that's not just a hard like this happened or it didn't. That's a way of seeing the world. That's an ideology. So we're often trying to dispute not just the like underpinning facts, because like we talked about on the pod, like I don't even think facts. I think facts are on the surface. I think the other shit underneath is really the problem. I don't really think
it's come from. Like, where did the story come from?
Right.
Why are we not given the facts? Who even framed these facts? There's all kinds of ways to look at that.
Yeah. So it's like, go ahead.
No, I was gonna shift gears. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, that's the shit that often that's what gets people is this. Because I think somebody said in the comment, it reinforces stuff that you already think is a problem. So something like the Willie Lynch letter will reinforce this idea that because black women are independent, that's why our relationships are fucked up. When even if you believe that black women are these like hyper independent women, which there's no evidence of, but even if you believe that, that didn't even occur because of slavery. Honestly, like that. I mean, just historically, like women having more like autonomy over their lives changed more with the economy, not because slavery impregnated this idea in their minds. But if you already have an issue with women who are quote unquote independent because you have like a deeper misogynistic issue anyway, then that just reaffirms what you want to hear. If you think that, men are weak and you think that gay people are effeminizing niggas, like this affirms all of that for you, So you don't have to do any research because you think that's what it is. So I'm saying,
right?
For people like that, that's not even about facts. That's about them trying to validate their worldview, and that's a deeper problem.
That's true. That's a good point. Validating their worldview. So it's like it's like they're almost seeking out the information that appeals to them based off of what they already believe or want to believe. Because that's the other thing people do sometimes. It's like under the guise of like, no, I really want to know, but you really just want to believe this, so you're going to try to find the information that proves this to be true. Like, they do that on Twitter a lot, right?
Not always try to find the information. You just go off of whatever you might see on social media. Like,
and now that's exactly what I was going to get to. That's exactly what they do. They go on Twitter and they're like,
I've been guilty of it. I think we've all been guilty of it, but I've been guilty of it. Like, remember the whole nice guy trope?
Yeah.
Everybody was like, "Oh, nice guys finish last," and I'm like, after growing up and learning, and that's like the key thing. Things change over time. Stuff happens. It's not always just this solitary thing as to why everything's the way it is. No, stuff happens. After growing up, I was like, no, it's not that nice guys finish last. I just didn't, you gotta find the person that's right for you. That person comes after so long. It's just it doesn't. It's not because
Well, maybe you're not as nice as you think you are. Like, that's the other thing. People don't ever right? They're like, oh, maybe she didn't give me any pussy, and I'm a nice guy, so she must like bad guys. She gave that nigga over there some pussy. And the reality is, you weren't. The fact that you felt entitled to her pussy in the first place shows us you're not a nice guy. And like there's this belief that you're the nice guy, and you're not the nice guy. Not you.
Or only
she might have been going through her own thing. You don't know.
Only performing those gestures as a means to an end is the furthest thing from nice. So if I'm only a gentleman because I'm trying to get pussy, or I'm only gonna speak to you in quote unquote respectable language because I'm just trying to get pussy and I want you to date me, then it's like the issue there becomes I'm only doing this as a manipulative device. I don't actually care about you. That's not nice. You know what I'm saying? Like that it's because like you said, it's an entitlement issue, right? Like I'm entitled to this type of woman because I'm nice. Niceness doesn't. Nobody owes you anything because you're nice. Like
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like
for the record, I didn't have that entitlement. I was genuinely trying to be nice to people.
No, I understand.
No, I wasn't saying that was the case for everybody. Because sometimes,
no.
Well, I want to say this too, though. Because
my thing was just opening your mind and being open to different facts. And like the fact is, okay, yeah, she might have dated that dude that's a bad boy or whatever. That's where she's at in her life. That has nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with
Right.
I also want to say you can't use your surface level thinking. You don't know what their relationship is like, right?
Exactly.
Maybe he supported her through her mother's chemo treatment. You know, like you don't fucking know. You just and because you have these judgments about somebody you see and an opinion of somebody you don't even really know. And now you've told yourself this story. It's like what therapists say, you tell yourself a story and you believe that story, so you're acting off of this story. You told yourself the story that she rejected you because you were nice and she liked him because he disrespects her and he's a thug and all this stuff. And that's the story you concocted in your brain. It doesn't make it true, right?
You don't know the whole
even. And to kind of back to the point we were talking about like kind of having a basis of like the primary contradictions or whatever. So like, it's not even necessarily just something you concocted it in your mind, but it's something that you're responding to an already existing structure that tells you that, in this case, usually black.
It.
Say what?
I said, and also reinforces that.
Yeah, because you're the concept is that black men who are involved in quote unquote illegal activities or whatever are just inherently trash individuals. Mm-hmm. Because you have been given this certain right, because there's this certain criminality that this idea of criminality that is marked on black people and particularly on black men in this case, and you are also you're just as brainwashed, I would say, in many cases as someone else. So you've told yourself that because I went to school or because I didn't get in trouble that I'm better than that person. Mm-hmm. Because again, the society sets those type of dynamics up and you're just playing into it. So instead of just seeing like, okay, he's doing what he's doing, I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm not any better than him because I have a quote unquote real job. You know, so you've built yourself up and the world reinforces that you are this, I am the prize to be won, right? Because I did all these good things. I made the right choices in life and all that shit. You know, it's all of that is bag. It's why it's always that particular one always gets on my nerves so much because there's so many issues embedded in that go beyond just the simple I'm a nice guy. You really think your shit smells great. Like
right. And the other thing though is like you've taken this you've taken this idea or this belief about yourself and have now told yourself that you're not only superior, but you're superior and therefore entitled to, right? It's like I'm superior and therefore I deserve these things. I did all these steps. I did the right thing. Why am I not being rewarded at the end?
Yep.
Right. And it's
childish in my mind. It's childish and it's even to the fact when women say, black men ain't shit or men ain't shit. I'm like, I get it. You went through a certain situation with a certain individual or even a number of people.
Or maybe you really just believe that. That's your prerogative.
I get it. But I mean, I have to. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I have to think that there's more to this world out there than just what I've gone through. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe this is just me needing to elevate, me needing to evolve and learn more. And a lot of people, I guess, like you said, they're entitled. They don't think they shit stinks. So it's got to be the world that's wrong. It's got to be this that's wrong. It's nothing to do with me. I don't have to check myself at all.
Nah.
Like, I mean, I wanted to just say real quick, because to the nice guy point, I don't want to make it out like every guy that says he's a nice guy isn't a nice guy. Now, in my experience, a lot of them haven't been nice. But also, you're right. There are the genuinely nice people. I'm saying this for a reason, because I be getting incels on my fucking Twitter all the time, and they stay in my mentions. If you don't believe me, you can look at them right now. They just go nuts. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on. No, I'm serious. This one guy got mad because I said I was open to dating a guy if he had one leg and one arm. He got mad at me. Don't know why. It's just these guys are insane.
There's nothing you could do with people like that.
They're nuts. I just blocked them. Colonel COVID Gaddafi, he actually was trying to stick up for me, was going in on the guy. So shout out to you, Colonel COVID Gaddafi. But yeah, so I want to clarify this point. I don't think every guy that says he's a nice guy or says he was a nice guy was necessarily an asshole underneath. Sometimes these are also characteristics, and this is a turnoff for women. Sometimes it comes off as low self-esteem and lack of confidence, right? It's like you don't have boundaries. So it's like people who ever say, like, what's your biggest flaw in a relationship? They'll go, I'm just too loyal. You know those people?
Yeah, too clingy. Yeah.
No, they don't say clingy. They say
I'm saying again, we're talking imprecise language earlier. Like that's really what they're saying.
Right, exactly. Or they're saying that you have no boundaries. You just let people do whatever the fuck they want, and you stick with them. So but again, that's still you having to look inside yourself, and that's hard to do.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go finish.
I was gonna say it's easy to say it's everyone else, but the reality is sometimes it's still us, and we have to change the way that we think. Meaning that much in the way we think. I mean, like actually critically thinking about ourselves, who we are, what is we're doing. Okay, the issue isn't that girls don't like nice guys. The issue is that I haven't been saying no when I mean no. I haven't been able to, speak up for myself. And she runs all over me. She doesn't respect me. That could be it too.
Yeah, and I think because I was gonna try to balance it out a little bit too. I think to be fair, there are nice people who genuinely do get taken advantage of. Like that does. Like there are nice dudes who genuinely are taken advantage of by women.
Call me out. It is.
And I'm saying like they genuinely get taken advantage of, and they might be abused, or I mean real shit. Like they get, and a lot of the times they don't have boundaries because they've been abused in their own situations, right?
That's always what it is. I'll say 90% of the time.
Right.
So I often talk about on here. So my story is I was raised by a narcissist. I was abused as a child, raised by an abusive narcissist, a single dad, tried his best but mentally ill. And then I only got into relationships with narcissists after that. Because I did not know what it was. I know what narcissism was. That was one thing. But two, I was so used to that type of dynamic and relationship. I didn't know any better. I was used to being taken advantage of. I was used to having to, go above and beyond for someone else with nothing in return. Like these were things that I was used to. And so I kept going from relationship to relationship to relationship. I ended up being, emotionally abused. My first relationship was extremely emotionally abusive. He would humiliate me in public, talk shit about my weight, all that shit. But my dad did the exact same thing. So all that trauma, and I always talk about that. We have episodes of this show where I focus just on trauma and relationships and stuff. And, that trauma affects our relationships moving forward. And we don't realize how much it affects us. So we end up being taken advantage of. We end up in relationships with people who are, and the other thing is, they seek out certain types of people. People who take advantage of other people, they seek out certain types of people. It's like I had this big sign on my forehead that said, "Oh, she's gonna treat you like a king, and you don't have to do shit." I don't, and I learned what my behaviors were that were signaling that. Constantly self-deprecating, right? Because that's a red flag to somebody who's looking for it's a red flag to somebody who's healthy, right? A healthy guy goes, "Ooh, she got some issues," right? A guy who's trying to take advantage of you will tell you what you want to hear because he knows you got that issue. So that trauma plays out because now I don't even know when I'm being played or when because I'm so used to this type of dynamic.
No, that translates to any relationship situation. Like some of the same stuff you said, I had to apply the same thing with me when it came to dealing with certain women. Like, okay, you know what? I'm not putting up with that. I need to say no right now, or I need to just cut that off right now. And to go back to it, to try to shift back to it, this is basically what we attempt to do with, some of the myths, just to get you to think differently. Here's the facts, research them, question us on it if you want, that's fine. and think differently and then apply it. Because the reason you're self-conscious about your weight, or the reason we have these whole debates about light skin and dark skin, it's not because of the Willie Lynch letters. Now that we know that it's not because of the Willie Lynch letters, where does it come from?
Right, like that. And then
see how dope they are. Did you hear that? What he just did? Okay, go ahead.
Now we can internally, like, we can question this stuff within ourselves. Like, why is it we remember back in what was it, back in like the 90s, 2000, if you was dark skinned, if you was dark skinned, you wasn't it. Like, you was in, and I'm talking about like just us in school. You know, every overly too dark girl was Darth Vader, and I'm guilty of it too. We used to make fun of them and all that. And why is that now? Like,
not Flavor Flav when I was in school.
Wait, what they call them?
Flavor Flav.
Ooh.
There was go, yeah.
Yeah, so
look, people
now that we don't have the Willie Lynch letter to blame for that, we've busted that myth. Why is it that we focus so much on light skin, dark skin and stuff? What is it? And that's something that's just internally with us. We're like, you know, because we see it on social media, or we've heard it from our families, or because historically, you know, light skin was always the favor. So, you know.
Yeah. Even that particular thing about light skin, that I think that I don't want to do a show on this because there are certain topics we also just try to, like, I try not to get in any, like, I know for me, I don't want to be in any of the gender wars. I mean, this is a good discussion, but I just try to, we don't even touch that shit. We don't even, like, because there are myths that I would love to debunk, like that shit, that article came out a few years ago, the black men are the straight black men are the white men of the black race or some shit. I think that was a terrible piece, and I can go off.
Black men.
Huh?
That was from very. They call them.
Yeah, it was from very smart brothers.
I call them very dumb niggas. But go ahead.
Yeah, it was a terrible piece.
I know who you're talking about because he did a whole video on it, and I think I know who you're talking about, but I don't want to call him out.
I don't know. I mean,
but he's a writer of very.
Damon Young is the nigga's name. I have no problem saying the person's name, but I'm saying.
I'm thinking of another name. I'm gonna see the link.
Panama.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that is like, we could talk about it, but when we're talking about like primary antagonisms, like I feel like, or primary not antagonism, primary contradictions, like I just feel like that conversation is just dead. Like, there's enough people that are gonna do that, and there are enough people that are gonna do that conversation justice as well. Like, there are people who can actually talk those things too well. I don't see there's really being a point on us doing it, but I do think that to just speak since this is a conversation, like, yeah, I mean, say what?
I ain't gonna lie, I think we could do it better, but you're right.
Yeah, I mean, we probably could. It's just like, I just feel like
it's not necessary.
I think part of the distraction in and of itself is to talk about that shit so much. Like, I think that's my own, like, personal conspiracy theory, is a turn, because even some of the shit that we make about quote unquote gender or whatever is often fueled by other shit anyway. Right. It's not just like bad beliefs about men and women, or bad beliefs about people of certain orientations, sexual orientations. Like, it's a lot of other shit systemically that feeds into that. But because everybody has these individual experiences, they want to, like, hover around that particular subject matter. Like, somebody didn't look. So even a topic that deserves some real depth just becomes about somebody not wanting to date you because of your skin tone. And that's the extent of how we understand colorism. Right. That's the extent of it. You know,
I will say this though, and there's two things, because I think I agree with you and I'm with you, because the conversation is overdone, and I definitely don't talk about that shit either. And at the same time, and it's because it's such an overdone topic, even if you did it justice, it can get lost in the weeds, right? Yeah. Like, so many people covering the same shit. Yeah. And along with that though, I feel like there are ways you can have the conversation in a brand new way that's nobody else is covering, and that is just as important, right? Because if nobody's you, right? Nobody's Terrell, nobody's Too Black, nobody's Vita, so nobody's gonna talk about the shit that we talk about in the way that we talk about it. Nobody's gonna do that shit, Terrell. But you know what I'm saying? So at the same, I agree with you. I don't do the shit because of the exact reason that you said. And sometimes I do wonder, like, the topics that I don't cover, because I think they're done terribly, is there a way I can introduce a concept or an idea that takes it away from just, for example, light skin, dark skin, and we start really tackling our low self-esteem as Black people? That's really what that is, right? And how the trauma of being mistreated and all the shit that we've been through being passed down to us, and we've inherited it, and we don't even realize where that low self-esteem comes from. I want to talk about the trauma and all that type of shit. I don't want to talk about who you can fuck and who you can't fuck. You know, I don't want to talk about every basketball player is with if he was with a white woman, and if she's not white, she's light skinned and all that dumb shit. Like, I can't do that. That's just
that's fair. I mean, me and Terrell met in college, and I remember even in college, man, when we used to have. That's the I talk, as y'all can see, I can talk forever, but that's the one subject matter that would come up. I ain't had shit to say. I would just be like, because it was always a dead end. Like anytime we had we used to be in this group called Men of Color. Anytime we usually were just men that met, and then we would let women in, and it would always just devolve into this just insanity. I just didn't want to do it, you know. Like, so I've always just seen it's always been such a divisive conversation, because I think it's one of the hardest things to get people to move past their personal feelings on. Mm-hmm. Like other stuff there's not as much baggage tied to it.
That's a good point.
You know, but with
stuff, it's back to who's fucking who.
Yeah, because there's so much pain attached to it, and I think, and also I want to say that the light skin, dark skin shit isn't just dating; it's also people's experiences at school. Right. And if anybody's worked in a school, you witnessed it. I witnessed it. I worked in Watts for a few years, and I witnessed the shit from dark skinned people where they would favor the little light skinned girl and she was the helper, you know, that kind of shit. And I would witness this, or they playing her hair and all that shit. So it's more than I
know people who like they'll specifically date a specific race or date a white girl, date a white man, just so they can have a light-skinned girl with the pretty hair and everything that she can show off, or they'll have a light-skinned boy with the curly hair and he's cute and all this, or he's mixed race, and it's like they'll date just so they don't have to have that problem of Blackness.
And that takes exactly, and that's the point. That's the point that I'm getting at. Like, there's clearly that there's something that's deeper where it has more to do with your self-esteem. You hate yourself so much you don't like. Most parents want their kids to come out looking like them, right? You want your baby to have your eyes or something like that. Maybe not exactly, or your wife or husband. How's that? Or
please let my kids look like my
or your partner, whoever, right? So, but to go from I don't even want my kid to be black as me, like that says a lot about what you've experienced in your pain, right? And the reason why I say, because I think people's pain is deeper than just dating too. So I don't want to completely dismiss people's pain around the shit either, right? Because it's what we experience at school, but maybe in our own families, right? Not mine, because thankfully my family was a little more militant. So, like, for example, when I learned about the Willie Lynch letter, when I first heard of it, I was being taught it was a lie. So my family's a little bit different, but I've seen so much shit that I can see how that pain can also carry over. But just also part of the reason, like you said, it makes it difficult to have the conversation because there's so much pain attached to it, not just dating, but how their parents treated them. You know, my mom always talks about, because she was the sister with the short hair, she was always mistreated. And she was. If you look at the history, she was the one that was mistreated.
Yeah, I think we just live. I think, to your point about it being deeper than just who likes who. Like, we have really fucked up family dynamics in general, and I don't blame that on us, you know, as being the root. But I'm saying, so when we talk about gender or even colorism in the context of dating, which routes back to the kind of like, and even when I say gender, that doesn't even really explain it because everything is gender, but it's like this kind of romantic, exchanging of gender, I should say. It's like, we don't deal with the other dynamics. So instead of it being like, growing up in poverty, living in a capitalist society, living in a racist society, living in a neighborhood because of the consequences of those things is a neighborhood where people are violent towards each other and people are always looking over their shoulder. All of those things contribute to the low self-esteem and all that. But instead of grading it on that kind of larger scale, it's just, oh, you just hate black people, or you just hate black people.
Right.
You know what I mean? It just gets watered down. So it's just like,
what's the point of trying to throw that conversation out there, but it's just going to get dismissed anyway?
Yeah, like so it's just like I mean, yeah, we could do it, and maybe one day we do it. Like it's not hard. It's really not none of this shit is hard to debunk. It's just like there's just so much. It's so much grifting around because it's such an easy thing because it's so personal. So you can always appeal to people's scars when you talk about their relationships or how they got made fun of as kids, because that always goes to like, oh, I remember that directly, versus something that's more something like racism. You have to demystify it, and break down, and it's not as like personal.
I got a dope idea while you were talking right now. So I get exactly what you're saying. And also you guys need to do things that are very specific and quantifiable, right? What if you challenge the myths around the history of light-skinned people? So there's this belief that all light-skinned people were rich and inheriting property. And I'm so serious. These people really believe this, or all the light-skinned slaves were in the house. And, so what if you guys do shows about that? Because that also is kind of the root where there's this belief that, well, light-skinned people had it better. Light-skinned people were rich. Light-skinned, and you know what I mean? Without even I look at the fact like Sally Hemings was like a quarter black and she was a slave until the day she died. Got everybody else free by having to be raped by the master, Thomas Jefferson. Got her kids free. I think her brother got free because of that. And she never got to be free. But she was light-skinned, so clearly she must have been favored. She must have been.
Yeah, I have a. Did we say this on the Willie Lynch episode, Tara? What I'm about to say, I don't know if we said on Willie Lynch episode or not, but this idea.
I got something after that. Say it anyway, though.
But no, it wasn't on the episode. It was when me and Cameron, we were doing a presentation last month, and somebody brought this shit up in the middle of our presentation. It had nothing. That's another thing. Is motherfuckers be bringing this shit in when it has nothing to do with the conversation. Because we were breaking down the podcast, and somebody at the end is like, "Can you guys talk about light skin, dark skin?" I'm like, "We ain't. What the fuck?" So anyway, so it's like, but I remember. I think Cameron, both of us said it. There's no such thing as a privileged slave. I think that's the myth. Like there's no such thing as a privilege.
No, and that's what these conversations sound like. It sounds like who. Let's talk about let's sit here and argue about who's got it better on the plantation instead of getting the fuck off the plantation.
Yeah, and that goes back to.
I'm not trying to have a conversation about like, oh yeah, how slaves got it good. No, because. Even if they were, even if that part of it was true, that they ate at the master's table and all that, whatever. But that's like picking. Do I want to get raped by a white man, or do I want to pick cotton in the hot sun and get whipped all day? Like neither one of those are something that I want to do.
But what about the myth about every light skin? Because people use that example in like Louisiana or whatever, right? Where those mixed light skinned women were what's that called, plissage, and then they like got wealthy off of that shit allegedly, and then or they talk about like slave masters' kids inheriting the property, which didn't happen that often from what I understand. I think it happened maybe like
slaves don't inherit property that's
because if your mother was a slave, you're considered a slave, so you couldn't have property.
Yeah, I was saying it was illegal for you to own property. So how are you inheriting property?
I mean, it happened here. It happened here and there, but it was not a
kid free. I think America Dixon. There's a whole movie and book about her. She wanted to. The dad raped her mother and felt bad. That's how the movie makes it sound. It's a true story, by the way. And he favored his daughter, and then sent her to France and all this shit. So she didn't. Oh no, she did inherit it from her family, and then you're right. The government tried to take it from her. Tried to say she didn't own it because she was born to a slave. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started the podcast in 2019, before we didn't actually launch it, but it originally started. Some stuff happened, but we did the first episode we actually did was Willie Lynch letter. It was a much different type of episode, but we never put that out. But say what?
Shout out to Manuel the comment.
Yeah.
He's a fan of both of us, and he loves the crossover.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. But we did an episode on that, and so with that episode, we actually just read the letter and went through and just debunked it line by line. We didn't do that in this last one. I'm glad we didn't, because I think we had a better conversation. But one of the things that was brought up, I was like, one of the major forms of like quote unquote hierarchy on a plantation wasn't always just skin. It was status. So if you were you could be a dark skinned slave or not, but if you were one of them people that got to drive the horses off the plantation, you were the quote unquote much more. If you wanted to use the word privileged, even though I don't think it applies, you were the head. You were the quote unquote house Negro because you got to leave the plantation. If you were somebody who was more highly skilled, like you had some type of carpentry skill or something like that, you could go out and sell your labor and even make a little bit of money and maybe even buy your freedom. These are very rare occurrences, but I'm saying those are the people who was quote unquote like privileged, if you want to use that word again. I don't think that applies because they were still slaves. But this idea that it was solely about being light skinned and solely dark skinned, it was about like, again, the status that you have. And we look at our community today, the people who really do we look up to, for better or worse, isn't really always based on their skin tone. It's based on their status. Now, their status might be associated with their skin tone, but when we think about celebrities, when we think about the leaders in our community, quote unquote leaders, it's because they're basketball players or because they're good at something. It's the status symbols that I think still sits with us more than the color. So it's always odd to me when people get caught up on that.
Yep.
Because the way plantations often function was based on status, and color was a factor in that, but it was not the ultimate determining factor in all cases. We organized around colorism, and then in some cases, colorism, I think historically, colorism is older than even what we've come to understand as racism. Like, you go to some societies, even before colonialism, they had certain caste structures. It wasn't as ridiculous as it is today because white supremacy and colonialism exacerbated them. But these caste systems have always existed, unfortunately, throughout society. So I think that's another part of it that gets twisted. And then
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say one more thing on I think Malcolm X, when he used house Negro, field Negro, people need to listen to the whole fucking speech, or at least the section. Because he was more so speaking about a certain mentality.
Right. That's what all the time.
Yeah, and it was not just about, he references light skin, but he was more so trying to get you to understand like someone like the masses. It was really a class critique of the black community. If you look at the analogy, he's talking about you have the master did pump up certain leaders on the plantation as examples of be good slaves. And then you had the masses. That was the quote unquote field Negro. So in the speech, he says it in several speeches, but the one I like the best, the message to the grassroots. He's like, I'm the masses. I'm the field Negro. The masses of black people want this. These few black leaders that have been selected by the white establishment want that. That's the distinction he was making, not these individual distinctions we make.
And who is better slave, right?
Yeah.
You actually, something you said, and it sparked another. Oh, I know what it was, because you said something about the caste system, which made me think about the Costa paintings. I don't know if you guys know what the Costa paintings are. Do you?
Yeah.
So the Costa paintings are the paintings that depicted the caste system based on racial hierarchy when Spain colonized what we call the Americas now.
Yeah.
So, and I love the painting. I like looking it up because it blew my mind, right? What blew my mind was, and I'm asking this question based off of what I saw, and also I saw somebody bring up the conversation around. They brought up the Moors, so that's what I'm getting at. So I look at the Costa painting.
Real quick.
Huh?
What is it?
Casta, Casta.
Okay, I just wanted to look it up real quick.
Yeah, Costa is Spanish for caste. In fact, let me put that on the screen so everybody can know what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna just sit here describing it.
Yeah,
I looked it up before.
Like as soon as I was like, okay, I need to look this up.
Yeah, I should just do that. Sometimes I'll be forgetting. I'm not that great with this whole talking and producing at the same time.
Yeah,
it's all good. It's all good.
So I'm trying,
get better. We don't know it all. We gotta look up stuff
all the time. Even things I know, I have to look up to remember if I knew it or not. So it's like
he has to remind me of stuff that I've shown him because I forget everything.
I be forgetting shit. So I mean, when you go over, like, if you read 2 books for one episode, you're not gonna remember the whole fucking book. It's like you're just, that's not gonna happen. Like,
so I'm gonna pull it up right now. This is the main one. There's multiple, but this is the most popular one. Oh crap! What did I just do? I'm trying to make it bigger on my screen so I can show it to you. So this is the thing I have with a lot of the elitist people who sort of counter the idea of there being a Moorish empire. And then there's also my issue with people who keep talking about the Moorish empire as though that was only Africans when it's a whole thing, right? But my issue is that there's not a lot of information that we've ever been taught about about any of this, right? Ever. And but yet I see things like this, and this is what got me questioning, like, what the fuck is a Moor, or who is this person in this picture? Because this doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm asking, somebody in the chat brought it up, and I really wanted to address it because you guys are here. And I know you guys haven't been researched it. This is a very casual thing.
That's the picture I pulled up.
Yeah. I just want to make sure people see it. This is from Wikipedia. That's where I got this. Where I pulled it up from. If anybody wants to know. But yeah. So if you look at the painting, and this is what I was trying to understand here. At the top here, where it has I don't know what that noise is. Look on the right side, right here, it says Spanish and Spanish with Indian, right? So that's showing you that a Spanish person from Spain that gets with a person who was indigenous here, they get together and they create a mestizo when they have a child, right? Mm-hmm. You guys probably heard that term before.
Right.
Now, the mestizo gets with a Spanish person from Spain, and they get together and have a kid. That child is now a castizo. If a castizo, now mind you, this is the hierarchy, like this is the top row. So the castizo gets with a Spanish person, they have now successfully whitened the race and they've become Spanish, right? Or what they call bettering the race, right? It's a real term. I can't say it in Spanish, I'm not gonna try. Now, on this right side, you see this last right square? You see Spanish person with a Moor. That's what la mora means, right? And that creates a mulatto. Now, this is the part I got confused. Now, they're at the top row. They're very, very dark. I don't know if you guys can see. Oh, what did I just do?
No, I can see. I don't know.
I can see this.
I don't know if the viewers can see it, but I can see it.
Okay, you guys see it in the chat? Let me look at you guys if they have it in there. Can you guys see it? Let me know if you guys can't see it. You guys should be able to see it though. So when I look at the last right top row and I see this dark-skinned woman with a child, and I'm looking at how they're dressed, right? They look pretty regal in a way. You got a nice little hat on, you got his little tights and his little black shoes and all that shit, right? So you have the Spanish person with the Moor, and they create a mulatto. And then you go down here, and this goes on to tell you what the other mixtures are. You get a mulatto with a Spanish person, you now have a Morisco. You have a Morisco with the Spanish person, you now have a Chino. And they know this keep going on down the line, right? Now, when you get down here to this last, not the last level, but almost the last level, you have this group here. So you have a albarazado, I think that's how you say it. Please forgive me if I fucked it up. So you have an albarazado, whatever, that with negra, right? So then I look at the negra, and she's pretty dark, and I'm looking at her child and what he looks like, how he's dressed and how they look, and clearly they're the poorer group, right? And so my question goes, well, What's the difference between La Mora and La Negra? Who are these two different groups? Why, like, what does that mean? And I've always asked that question. I haven't gotten an answer to it yet. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because, so I have questions like this, right? And then I go online and I see a lot of, some of my favorite Black scholars, kind of talk shit about Black people who believe some of the myths about around the Moorish Empire. And then they, like to talk about them and talk shit about them, tell them how they don't want to really be Black and that's their whole reason for doing this or whatever, right? But at the same time, there are legit questions that to me exist, and we don't have any, there's no conversation about those at all. Do you guys have any opinion on that? Have you guys seen that conversation around like the Moors and Moorish Science Temple? Because also some of the guys who represent it's gonna be hella weird. I'm not gonna lie to you.
The most
but that's them being weird to me doesn't take away from the fact that there was an actual empire and they did actually exist and they were at one point they did conquer Spain. It did not include, it wasn't just Africans, it was also Arabic people. So but we've never learned about it. You learned about the Greeks, you learned about the Romans, you learned about their whitewashed Egyptians, right? But you've never really learned about so many of these other empires that existed and what happened. There's a reason why you're only taught about certain things. You never learned like they call something World War I that didn't involve the world, right? Because that to them is their world. So they're only going to focus on the shit that makes Eurocentrism look desirable and achievable. So, there isn't a lot of information. So I appreciate you guys for being like, oh, we're learning along with you. But have you guys seen that conversation take place? And, what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I mean, again, yeah, you're right. We didn't have a chance to research it, so I'm not
I'm not expecting you guys to do a podcast.
Yeah. I'm just saying, even right now, I'm not gonna try to talk as an authority on it. I mean, I know about the Moorish Empire, to some extent, and I've also been in those circles where that's a conversation. The whole like the Moors were here before Christopher Columbus, or the Moors were on the the Moors were on the boat with Christopher Columbus when they came here. There's even folks that go as extreme. I don't know if you've heard this one, to say that there never were any slaves. That was all a myth.
That one's, I don't even know where that one came from, but I have heard that before.
Yeah, there's no slaves. It was just Moors, and actually the original people on this continent were only Black people. We talked in the pod about how that gets labeled as Hotep or whatever, but and so in those circles, I've heard that. But to your question specifically being, are we aware of this conversation, or you're asking more so why do we not?
What's your take on the conversation, or your opinion on the conversation? It's like how I just described it, right? Like I didn't take a side necessarily, but I've seen the conversation and what it looks like, and I don't think it's been a really fair conversation.
Well, I think with a lot of this stuff, it gets like this stuff on this, any type of like ancient Black history gets bastardized because of the types of people that often end up talking about it. So there's a real stigma. Some of it I think is earned around Afrocentricity. It just oversimplifies some parts of history. It's not, and since we do debunk myths, I can't sponsor oversimplifications of history for the sake of race is not skin color. We did an episode on that too, but it oversimplifies history. Another thing, kind of to this point, we talked about this on Willie Lynch episode, the one we just did, and we talked about this on the episode on melanin. But like racialization wasn't a thing in the 700s when the Moorish Empire was running.
Right.
That the race was not known as it is today to 2000 AD Scott's point. Like it wasn't known in that sense. So when we try to look back on that history through the lens of like these were Black people, and it's like that's not what it was. So you're trying to apply your 2021 or whatever year you're coming from understanding to something in a world where that wasn't even a thing. And it's funny because even within the years that we've lived in our own lives, we know there's certain logics that you couldn't apply even 10 years ago. We watch clothing styles go out and you don't wear that anymore. You know, we see things change all the time, but for some reason we think we can look back 4,000 years ago or something or
have the same tape.
Yeah, and we can apply the same logic when it's like, no, that's not. So I think, but at the same time, even though I don't really care for Afrocentricity, at least some of the more extreme versions of it, I understand the desire to want to understand where people that you think look like you, even though they weren't considered Black people at that time, I understand the desire to want to know that history, because you're often just given white folks, Europeans,
kind of like,
yeah, I understand. I think that's a real desire, and I think often that gets exploited. You know, we were talking about cults and stuff, but I think that's how people end up in some of these weird groups.
Yeah,
but I do think, but that desire is a real thing to want to know, and often to critique the academic world, the people that we label as hoteps or whatever you want to call them, they're the ones that they make their information very accessible in ways that some academics don't. So Black socialism isn't usually as readily available when somebody wants to know their history as Afrocentricity is. You know, as a quote unquote hotep world is. That stuff is usually sitting right there. I gotta go find Black communism. That's not, you know, that's becoming more popular here lately, but that's not just sitting there for me to go there. But I can find, you know, we were kings and queens, like that's right there. You know, I mean, even though I don't even agree with a lot of these groups, the Hebrew Israelites be in the hood passing out pamphlets in Indianapolis. You know, like the 7 Day Adventists, you know, they be at stuff. Like there's not any Black communists though. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's not. So I'm saying like sometimes it's an issue of accessibility. I don't think this stuff is readily available. And I think when people go out to try to research or try to search for things, they may not have the skill sets in some cases. They end up falling into these oversimplified narratives of history. That's my understanding of it.
And to be fair, like I don't understand shit. Like I feel really confused, and I can research, right? Like I've been researching my whole life, and yet and still it's like I reach a block when I'm trying to make sense of the world around me. And I like something that you said because again it's like you naturally do the empathy thing. I don't even know if you realize you do the shit, but again, you highlighted like, I have understanding for the need underneath, because understanding and clarity and knowledge are needs, right? And those are the needs that are underneath people wanting to, you know, research these things, get this information, and even maybe get the simplified version. But it's also what makes it so these groups take advantage of it, because that's the group, and which is how every cult or any group honestly really works, any group at all, right? There's a group that exists that either identifies with your issue or they've told you they got the solution to it. Oh, you want understanding and knowledge? I will take advantage of the fact that you need understanding and knowledge. And then that becomes, you know, this belief system eventually, right? But I just wanted to highlight that you do the thing that I try to get people to understand, which lets me know that underneath in all of your work, that's probably the case. I'm a strong believer that content that comes out of people is because of who they are, right? And I can see that you guys have a perspective that adds up to where it's what you're saying, where it's not, I'm gonna come up here to look down on you until you're stupid for believing this dumb shit, like which is what they do on Twitter, right? Or how the academics make you feel when they start shit at you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't do that because like I used to believe like the stuff you're literally talking about. I used to believe that more as shit. Like I was into that, so I would never be turn around and be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like I was much younger, but I still, regardless of my age, was like into the Afrocentric shit. Like a lot of this stuff I can critique because I was actually there. Another thing, even though I get the jokes on the hoteps and stuff, like I think sometimes people don't actually be in like these spaces. Like they don't, so like you're making fun of these like stereotypical, you know, sexist, patriarchal Black dudes and these, but you've never actually been in a Black nationalist space. You've never attended an organization in a Black nationalist space. You've never actually been, because I mean I've been around it. The ones who are ass backwards, the ones who be about their life. I've actually been in those spaces. I've talked to those people. You've never studied anything. Your idea of Pan-Africanism is, you know, just somebody wearing a dashiki. You never act.
Umar speak like a few times.
Yeah,
I'm not even gonna lie to you.
I had to. I
was saying some real shit. Not even gonna lie though. But go ahead.
Say what?
But at the time, because he was like early. This was before he got popular at all. It was before anybody. Dr. Umar. Yeah, before anybody knew who he was. He was honestly before anybody knew who he was. But like the little those spaces that you're talking about, the like Black nationalist spaces and the Pan African spaces, those like these little out here, like these little hole in the wall type joints, and then everybody kind of gathers and they all, you know. So that's the kind of tours he was doing and shit like that. And but the one when I heard him, he was talking about Black psychology in schools. And at the time, that's when I was working at Watts, working specifically with children whose parents were incarcerated and kids who were in foster care and kinship care. So I was always in like the IEP meetings. I was a part of that team, right? So everything he was saying was everything I was literally witnessing at the time. So I was like, oh shit, like somebody knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then he had like the research to back up the shit that I was seeing, right?
Yeah, he just didn't stay in his lane.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened. He started doing all kinds of weird shit. And I think people are getting gassed. I mean, now he wasn't accurate on everything, but who is, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, for our podcast, it requires us to have a working knowledge of a lot of different subjects if you're gonna talk about them. But like but my actual like field is poetry. You know what I mean? Like that's what I actually used to have, especially before COVID. That's what I was performing poetry. That was my quote unquote job. You know, if you were to give me one. But as a poet, you also need to have a working knowledge of a lot of shit if you want to write about shit, because you can't write about poetry. You got to you have to have a subject matter. But I'm saying like a lot of times people get outside of their lane. Like even what we do, we are specifically going to like look into some information, debunk it, break it down, etc. If all of a sudden me and Terrell became relationship counselors because we're popular enough where people just think we're authorities on everything, we could probably do that shit, but it would be embarrassing. And that's not our lane. You know what I mean? Like,
and also that's why you get people to start trying to seek out ways to call you a hypocrite. You know, they get mad at you. They're trying to see, because you've been like talking down to him. It's like, well, let me find if this guy's really who he says he is.
Yeah, like, so I don't want to get it. I don't want to get too like, again, we do Black myths. We're not trying to do myths on every fucking thing on the planet either. Like somebody else can do that. There's podcasts to do that. Like, but I just think people be getting outside their lane. Because it's there's an allure in being like an influencer or a talking head, because you can sound smart and people will buy into it. Because again, back to that point, people are always searching. People are hungry for information, and if you can break it down in a way that resonates with them, they'll roll with you, even if you're bullshitting, because they fuck with you.
Right.
And so when
that goes into why we don't and can't do certain topics and certain, myths or whatever because it's like you said, it's not our lane, and a lot of it, of course, like we said earlier, is just surface stuff that we can break down easily, and the video would be 10 minutes.
If that, right? Yeah.
If that, we have the content for it, but it's got to be stuff that we already have a little bit of knowledge on, and stuff that like I'm just being simple. It's in our lane. Like me and Black are not relationship counselors. We're not Dr. Umar. We're not what's his name, Derek Jackson. We're not
Kevin Samuels.
You're not Kevin Samuels.
So this is the thing. I'm glad you brought that.
This stuff is funny, and I think a lot of times with even if we were to go into like that, if we want to go into that subject or whatever, but like when it comes to like Derek Jackson, Kevin Samuels, because there's the funny thing on Facebook and Twitter, like if they debated or whatever, if they did a versus, and I think people fail to realize that these dudes they're just influencers. They're entertainers.
Oh my God. I love you guys so much. Like, you have no idea how much. First of all, oh my God, you'll find out in a second. Finish your point, because you guys.
I can't take, like, if I posted this one time. I was like, how when everybody was talking about, everybody has an opinion of what a real man is. I was like, you realize everybody's opinion, they're putting this on social media. If you go off of what everybody says on social media of what a real man or a real woman is, you will be jumping through hoops. You'll be jumping through so many hoops to try to fit that standard that you won't even know who you are anymore. You won't know yourself.
And most of that shit is like different people have different opinions, and then people will somehow generalize it. Like one woman will say one thing, right? She'll say, I like a guy who pulls out my chairs before we sit down to eat, right? And then another woman might say, I don't like when a guy pulls out my chair when it's time to eat or whatever. Then here comes some dummy retweeting it, and they go, what do women actually want? See, they don't know what they really want. These were two different women with two different opinions. Neither of them probably even communicated with each other.
Like, no,
for women, because and then that's like the thing that cracks me up the most when they do that shit. They do it always with women. It's always some dumb shit like, women said this and now they're saying that. No, these are two different groups of people. These are not the same.
Right, like they have a constituency that they're speaking for versus their own preferences.
Right.
And
like that's what's always so weird about this stuff is like I don't know especially on the internet. I don't know what the dominant opinion. Like there was a myth I wanted to do and I realized we couldn't do it because I couldn't quantify it. Like it was I just couldn't find. So it was like I would have just been advocating to do an opinion that I couldn't quantify. It was the myth was like Pan-Africanism equals Hotep or Hotep equals Pan-Africanism. I believe that that's unfortunately what has happened, but I can't prove that because all I have to go off of is what I see online, and that's not a real sample size.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know if that actually is representative of how most people think of the idea. I would have to actually poll that. I don't have the ability to do it. Therefore, I would just be saying it would be a straw man myth, where we're just making up something that we can easily debunk. But it's like I can't prove whether that's really a thing versus we can say the Willie Lynch letter not a thing, or even certain myths we can show you how it plays out. We can at least say this is a thing on some level. With that, it's like the best I could do is show you some tweets. If I really wanted to push that argument, I could, but it would be more of an actual opinion. And it's like I feel like people's sample size to the point is like their sample size is whatever you see on your timeline, and that's not scientific. Like,
hold on. Make him say that shit again.
No, that's real shit.
Size is not real. It's not real if you're just looking at what you see on Facebook. That's not real.
Facts.
And we'll probably suffer. We'll probably suffer when it comes to content to try to push a whole bunch of content out. We'll probably suffer because of that. But we want, like you said, we want to be able to quantify stuff, and maybe we'll do a bullshit episode or something where we just talk about this stuff, and because even after we record an episode or whatever, we stay on for like an hour or two longer.
Yeah, shooting the shit, but
past our bedtimes talking shit. And I always thought we should post some of that stuff on there.
Just be clear that this is just us talking shit. But it's like I think my issue is people will pass off them talking shit. Like we're having a conversation right now. I think this is a great conversation, but these are still opinions, and I think it's based in real shit. But we're having a conversation. But I'm not gonna post this as an episode of this is us debunking social media or some shit. Like, no, this is how we feel about it. I think we have good positions, but
we're real enough to put it in there. Like, hey, look, this is our opinion, and we just bullshitting.
I think that's kind of what we do. Like, we have our most of our podcasts are like serious topics, and we have some serious topics live stream. Well, T does, not me. I mean, they're serious, but they're not going to be rigid, they're more opinionated. It's more casual, it's whatever. I didn't come up here with like a list of questions. I'm thinking of this shit as we've been talking, But to the things that to a point that you made, Terrell, about influencers, and I actually wanted to talk about this. Actually, my last question, and we're going to kind of wrap up because I told you guys an hour. Y'all stuck with me too, and I was not going to give y'all up. So if y'all wasn't going to say shit, I wasn't going to say shit. But it's about to be 2 hours, and I do want to end with this because I'm this is based off of something Kenny and I, the other champagne shark, Kenny and I were talking about this morning, which was the point that actually both of you had made. which is we could do the bullshit because and grow our following and all of that. But what does that get us, right? Like, what is that? What are we providing? What is it that we're really doing on here, right? And when I look at people like Kevin Samuels and the Derek Jacksons and the B. Simones and all the other people that have clickbait headlines that are just berating people or talking shit and then telling you they're giving advice, and they're like berating people and it's entertainment. And I keep emphasizing that point. Like, I don't fall into that stupid conversation about whether or not Kevin Samuels is right or wrong, because fuck him. He says all kinds of goofy shit. The point is, he's an entertainer. He's an entertainer. He's a salesman. He sells coaching classes. So he's berating women for your entertainment, and then of course he has to berate you to let you know that you're not good enough. You're not a high value man. Take my coaching class so you can now become a high value man. And by the way, watch me berate these women and you guys cheer it on. So I know how to humble women. You don't. Take my class, right? So that's his whole little marketing thing. Then you have, the Derek Jacksons who have their thing where they overly try to appeal to Black women and like it's real patronizing, a little corny. And then you got B. Simone who's just like telling women like what was her last viral video? Some shit about you can't.
Some shit women already fucking know.
You need exactly what I did. Go ahead.
Already.
What'd you say?
When I'm gonna rant because the shit was funny. But I was annoyed at the same time because, like, and maybe I'm just an asshole. Her voice, god damn. Like, did you hear it?
Yeah, I heard it. It's loud.
Like her voice.
I don't even watch these people, so I'm learning right now. Like,
you know what's funny? Voice, I see this shit.
Her voice just it.
But the thing about
the impression of it. Her voice alone just turned me off. And then I was like, okay, I got to get past that. And then she's already going into stuff that, now granted, I know women that do need that advice, that do need it. But majority of them
on Twitter.
Why do you think there's been a shift in the culture where women are pursuing more degrees, getting better jobs, closing this wage gap to the point that a lot of feminists can't argue it anymore because Black women are coming in and closing that gap. Right. And why do you think they know this shit already?
Because her job is
they gotta bring themselves and more to the table. They know this already. Right.
That's the thing. Like it's the same tactic that Kevin Samuels uses, right? I want to berate some real straw man point. Like nobody's saying that shit. Like maybe all the 5 women that's saying it, you're not even reaching them. They're not even your audience. And so it ain't even about them. It's about entertaining your base. And you want people to go, yeah, girl, you better tell them. Yeah.
Even to a point of him, you tell him like I get it. If you want to be extremely real about it, which is that's just no.
But this is the thing.
There's always variables and stuff to it.
But this is the thing. All that
real and stuff like that. Okay, whatever. But if we think about it, like you telling a woman, "Oh no, you're not as high as you think you are because you have children, you're overweight, they probably already, Black people are really critical of themselves. They know this shit about themselves.
Ooh.
I know that my dating pool is going to be, minimized because women don't like men with bad skin. I have bad skin. Women don't like men that don't earn as much. I don't earn as much. I know this already. Are you throwing in my face again? I don't fucking understand. Why are you throwing in a woman's face that you should lower your standards because you're overweight?
I don't. Again, I can't speak. I don't watch these niggas, so I'm not gonna try to act like I know what they be saying. But I have an idea because I say what.
You're better off for not watching. I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen enough videos throughout my life, and I've been in enough conversations where I think I have a good idea of how this goes. And again, to the point we brought up at the very beginning, we were talking about primary contradictions. So this is not a primary contradiction. This is some shit. This is some offshoot, like way down the line,
But my point, that wasn't even that. We kind of just trailed off into that. My overall point, because he brought up influencers, and I want to talk about you guys and how you guys approach how you guys come across. Because I was saying, like, me and Kenny were talking about how we could get more. We can get the Kevin Samuels type of numbers, right? Going viral on Twitter. We can get the B. Simone's going viral on everywhere, right? But we don't do that type of content because we actually want to provide something that's dope and for the people. Because what the fuck is the point? The reason why I do media at all, because I kept telling myself, yo, there's conversations that we're not having that we should be having. And not the bullshit where they say, we need to talk about race. I don't even want to have that conversation. I'm talking about amongst Black people. We need to be talking about what are the new ideas and conversations that are coming out of right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, I'm repeating a lot of stuff I said on the podcast to the point where I hope people still watch it or listen to it. But
well, they didn't know it was on the podcast till you told them. So
right. But I'm just remembering. But I think we center the subject matter, not ourselves. I think that's and I think that's important. So you can build your show around the personalities. It doesn't mean the personalities don't matter. I mean, if you're boring and you don't know how to talk, then nobody wants to listen to that. But it's ultimately like people are like, oh, they're covering this myth. I'm going to listen to it because I want to hear that shit broken down. Not, Too Black is got a show, so I want to hear it because Too Black has like. There's a difference in how you frame it. So a lot of these people, they frame it off their personalities,
right?
It's framed on how, man, that and like Terrell said, that shit's entertainment. So I'm not even really watching this for education. I'm just watching this because this shit's funny or I'm bored or whatever. Like, I'm not even engaging the content in the same way because it's not presented that way. Now, some people do take it as gospel, but those types tend to play on, our lower selves, so to speak. They tend to prey on the bottom feeder nature of that we all have inside of us. On some level, they tend to prey on that. So one thing that annoyed you because some girl didn't want to talk to you one day becomes like a whole subject matter when it was like one experience that you just are annoyed about, but then that paints the whole population of women or, like that. That's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have to even appeal to shit like that. Like, we can actually be in a situation where we're like, that's not, if we had a more organized community or organized groups of people, like shit like that would just get shut down. Or it would just be put in perspective of entertainment or whatever, because we understand that's not even important.
You would feel bad about bringing the shit up after we were done.
Say what?
You would probably feel bad about bringing the shit up after we were done.
Right.
We're not going to take your side. Or we're not going to take Kevin Samuel's sides. We're not going to take Derek Jackson's sides. We're barely even playing the middle. We're really just like gonna shift the shit away from it because it's like that's not what we're here for.
It doesn't. It's like sometimes conversations, like what happens with conversations, I think, where the media, as in, if we're gonna be more clear, like the news media or the more mainstream corporate news media tends to frame conversations, and you see this trickle down to how people even do this on YouTube. So they create the in and out points on shit, and then we don't even get outside of that. So they say, the Democrats, the Republicans, and then anything outside of that is not even considered, whatever that is, right? Mm-hmm. Like anything that goes outside that spectrum. So niggas would be like, do you want a woman who supports you, or do you want a more independent woman? And then we really start to believe like that's the spectrum of women is somewhere in there. And then anything else, like any other form of living of womanhood is not even like, so it's like those people, the way they frame conversations is where you really just, the real problem is not taking a side. It's like the whole way this conversation is framed, regardless of which side, is the real problem.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So it's important to have those conversations. That's what I'm saying. If you're having something new you're bringing to the conversation, repeating things women already know, or, finding little, like I was reading something where someone's talking about, sex, you don't have to be a hoe, or don't be a hoe anymore, or don't listen to these feminists and be a hoe. I don't know, some shit like that. And I was just like, what is like there's no even new conversation there. You're just repeating shit, right? And I always find it fascinating how the binary shit or the shit that's just reinforcing the same thing you already believe, or already a part of it, or maybe not even believe the same thing that tends to evoke a response out of you. You know what I mean? And you're constantly engaging with it. But at this, you're fast. I'm fascinated about how people can be so addicted to that and then be so close to alternative perspectives.
Well, it's like when you set an in and out point. I've just seen this, just even because I've had to lead my fair share of conversations, and I know it's always how you frame things is very important. I think that's something we try to get right with the show. So when you set these in and out points, like we were talking about with myths, or we were talking about with cults and stuff, how you can shut off certain channels and just kind of create that. So it's the same effect where you frame the conversation as this, and you have to really almost be trained to get past that, or just naturally have it. But most people, like, okay, they just accept that frame. And that's really how propaganda works. It's not often just the idea in a silo. It's the way things get framed. That's the real danger for me. That's why we push back on myths, because it's like if somebody just says something but it fits within the framework, then we'll have that conversation. But if it doesn't fit within that framework, then people often are like, well, that's crazy, or that's too extreme. But it's like, okay, but what is the existing framework that makes this extreme?
Right.
What is the existing framework that makes socialism an extreme idea? Like what is the existing framework, and why is that framework there? And how the media manufactures consent, to take Noam Chomsky's line, like, is by framing things. And so when we frame things in a way where it's very reductionist, in a way like women are just this and that, men are just this and that, there's obviously people that don't even identify just as men and women. So we missed that part already. You know what I mean? And then we create these binaries of how people should even express themselves anyway. So I'm saying, like, the framing of things is so important, because that's how people tend to kind of like map the world. And if you frame things in a narrow way or in a very oversimplified way, then that tends to be how people look at it, versus if you give them more options. So it's like, and people are not trained to get past that frame. And I see it all the time where
every day
just set up shop and you just see it play out, and it's just like, damn.
I love how you explain that, because I think that's exactly what fascinates me about it. It's just really how the brain and the mind works. One of the things, learning more and more about trauma, is you're pretty much forced to learn more about your brain, right, and how it actually operates. And I think that's one of the key things that I teach about, is how your brain works, because I think that was in my, I guess my theory is that can help us become more empathetic when we realize, oh, this is just how our brains work. I can be more patient with people who don't understand something, when I'm thinking, okay, it's new information is hard. You know what I mean? My only issue is when people start making personal attacks, and then I got to go at your ass. But other than that, it is what it is at that point. But I usually try my best to be like, okay, well, let me see. Unless it's some hateful shit. And that's the other thing I don't like. Hateful shit, anti-black kid shit. That shit, I probably won't. I won't be the nicest to you. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, but there was something in the we were talking about the contradictions, but they were talking about non-antagonistic contradictions and antagonistic contradictions. So I was listening to a video. Somebody's breaking this text down as well, and they were saying how if we're driving in a car and we're on a road trip, all three of us, we might get along for maybe 2 hours. We got a 10-hour ride. There's gonna be some shit you do on that destination that's probably gonna get on my nerves. I don't really learn the list. Like, Terrell's choice of music is definitely not gonna be mine. I can say that for real. So it's like, so I might be cool with that shit for 2 hours or whatever. And then at some point, I'm like, I'm gonna put my headphones on or something or whatever. But then there's antagonistic things where it's like, if Terrell is constantly berating one of us in the car, then we might have to kick this nigga out the car. Like, it's not a matter of we can work through that. Like, he just needs to go. You know what I mean? So it's like, sometimes we can work through certain struggles. And then other things, like you said, if it's some shit is anti-black, if you're just dunking on the whole community, like, you're disrupting the whole situation, this car ride is not going to work out. We might have to actually put you in front of the car and drive over you, right? Like, because you're just a real problem, right? So it's like, yes, sometimes, you know, there are things I think we can work through and be empathetic, but then I don't want to be so empathetic to one perspective that it ends up harming the other groups of people in the car. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be that. Like, that's not actually empathy anyway. Like, you're just siding with this, and the whole ride is fucked up because you're trying to center this one person. It's like, no, Terrell should just get the fuck out of the car if he's really being that much of a problem. Right. Sorry, I'm picking on Terrell.
That makes me feel better though, because you say it makes me feel better. Like I not want to be lying. Like, well, I'm empathetic towards everybody. No, sometimes I go in on niggas, but
no, that's real. You gotta especially when you're dealing with like the type of person I try to be, to go along with his analogy and everything. If you're tired of hearing my music, I'm gonna pass you the aux cord. I am open to hearing whatever you gotta play, whatever you want to play, because I promise you, Black is not gonna want to hear all the Chicago drill music I'm gonna play all the time. He's not gonna want to hear me. The recent road trip I just did, like me and my fiance went to Virginia. I'm playing Life Jennings like the whole album. Was it Life Change? He's probably not gonna.
I could probably tolerate that. I could tolerate that better than drill, but anyway, go ahead.
I'm so picky. I don't give people shit. I can't, because something I hate. Unless I know you got at least some decent taste, or there's something I know we both like, I can't do it. Because if you put on some like EDM, I'm gonna have to kick you out of my car. I can't do that shit.
No, you gotta.
I don't care. I don't care if you tell me it's no. I don't want to hear niggas talking about food and they talking about drugs. Like, that's confusing. No, don't want it. But
maybe I'll give you about a cool 30 minutes of it, or whatever I can take of it. And if it's just not hitting, it's not hitting.
I don't have to even invite me to shit where the music ain't gonna be something I like. Don't even invite me. I'm not gonna have a good time.
I will wear my headphones in a situation. I mean, Terrell knows I will isolate the shit out of myself. So I mean, you know, there's that story that Shell always tells of me in the back of a club on a laptop and shit. so it's like I will find a way. I will pull out. That's why I read ebooks. Like I will be in the middle of the most ratchet place on my phone. Like, I don't give a shit if it's that bad.
Weren't you reading like I don't know what you were reading, but I don't know what you was reading because I was high as hell. But Thanksgiving when we went to your people's crib, remember we stopped at Mark's crib? We stopped at your brother's crib.
Yeah, it was a long day, but yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And me and his brother are like just talking shit, going in, getting high as hell, and this nigga's just like he's in his phone, not everywhere. And I'm like, he's isolating himself. So
yeah, I'm saying that's me on a road trip. That's my way of dealing with the fact that I know I'm very picky, and knowing that I know that I can't really be in a lot of spaces unless I'm willing to concede a lot. So I have my things, I have my gadgets with me.
That's beautiful. That's really one of the best ways, because I think for me, I like to just be the one to drive. That helps.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool.
Yeah.
And then our space to do our thing, and he just did his on his own. But he allowed us to have our space to do our thing. He didn't interrupt.
Brother, I have a 15-year-old baby brother, right? And we, for the most part, we have the same taste in hip hop. Like, he likes JID and Mick Jenkins and all that shit, and I like that shit too. But there's other shit that I like that he don't like. He thinks it's too old, right? So he doesn't really like, Nas and, like the older stuff. He likes newer shit, but not really old shit. So if I'm on one of my, I was on my little tribe called Quest Binge once, right? And he puts his headphones in and he goes into his own little world. I pick him up every weekend. And so I asked him one day, I was like, do you just hate my music that much? He's like, it's not that I hate your music, but I want to hear mine more. So I was like, can't be mad at that. And, so I always respect and appreciate people who found their way to deal with things. I think when I was younger, I didn't have headphones, or even if I did, I will feel like, will I be rude if I put my headphones on? Well, I'll just sit here and take this shitty ass music and feel miserable and angry and sit here seething because I fucking hate this stuff. I'm having a horrible time. And as opposed to just, fuck it. If they think I'm rude, at least we all comfortable. You enjoy your shit, I enjoy mine.
Yeah, I mean, especially that's one thing. I'm not going to credit capitalism for this, but just as far as the innovation of technology, it's given us the ability to kind of like have our own space more. But like, even when I was younger, like I don't know. I've always been a picky person, so I usually either just subtract myself from certain things, or I just accept the fact that there's a certain level of shit I'm about to deal with. But like, I try to respect other people's spaces too. So even if I go somewhere and niggas is talking in ways that I don't even agree with, I'm not gonna get into the debate with them unless they want to press me. That's different. But like, if it's your space, man, if you want to be on some black capitalist shit, I'm gonna let you be. Mm-hmm. Now, if you ask me, it's a different conversation. But I'm saying until then, I'm not gonna be like, so actually, I'm not gonna be the nigga that's spoiling everybody's fun. Like I'm not trying to be that person. Like, actually, brother, like, no, that shit is exhausting, man. Like, nobody cares. Shut the fuck up. Or just go home. Or I'll just, again, I'm a weird nigga. I can sit. One time I was at Terrell, Treese in Indianapolis. Like one time it's a concert. One time there was a span of like 3 hours where
you about the DJ?
No, that hip hop concert Treese out in Fountain Square.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of hip hop acts. There was a span of time for like 2.5 hours. I didn't like any of the acts, so I just went in my car and I watched the movie. Like
I do shit like that. I will do something like that now. When I was younger, no, but now I do shit like that all the time. I'll go to my car.
Yeah, I don't have to do this. Like, I guess that's always my position. Like, I don't have to be here. That gets me in trouble sometimes. But I'm just saying, like, I don't really have.
I think that's healthy, me personally, because I wish I was more like that, especially growing up. I didn't know how to say no or do the things that made me comfortable until probably the last few years of past few years. Because I was kind of not a people pleaser, because when it came to certain things, I didn't have issues saying something, but like if other people were getting hurt, I could say something. For some reason, it was easier for me to stand up for other people than it was for myself. But I could never get myself to put myself in a comfortable position until a few years ago when I started, dealing with my shit. And I realized I don't have to be miserable to make sure somebody else is comfortable. I'm responsible for my own self and how I feel. I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't got to do this. If I don't y'all probably gonna hate me after I say this, but I hate nature. Don't put me in nature. I don't camp. I don't like that shit. I don't like sand at the beach. I live in LA and I fucking hate the beach. I like to look at the shit. I don't want dirt on me. I don't like sweating and shit. I hate all that shit, right?
No, I get that. I like nature and I like being outside, but I physically can't handle being outside. It is not always the thing.
So that's the thing. I like nature in nature.
So I start itching. Nope, can't even do it.
That's the thing. I like nature in nature. I like pictures of it. I can see it from my window in my hotel room. I love that shit, right? But I can't do the nature shit. Like I'm not about to go hiking and shit. And I remember I went on a girls trip and just to Santa Barbara or something. And it's a nice trip. And my friend had a whole itinerary planned out. And I saw on my itinerary hiking. I was like, first of all, you knew you invited me on this trip. What the fuck is this? Because we didn't get the itinerary literally till this day we were about to leave. So I'm like, oh, hell no. And the first they were trying to make me feel bad about not wanting to hike and We get to the hiking spot. They got off the car. I stayed my black ass in the car. I knew I didn't want to do it. And the thing people don't understand is I don't want to ruin your fun by being miserable. So I'm going to have an attitude. I'm not going to want to be there. You're going to be like, you came. Vita came. She had a whole attitude. Oh, my God. You could just stay in the car. Exactly. So I'm going to right now, you guys enjoy your trip with snakes and dirt and all kinds of bugs and shit. Y'all like that shit. Go get dirty and nasty and all that shit.
Yeah.
I'm open to a lot of things. Like I will, even though I'm not the type to go to, we'll say like one of those screamo concerts.
Oh no, not happening.
That's not my lane. That's not me. but I am open enough to where I'll go, and if I'm not feeling it, I'm like, all right, out of here. But at least at the very least, I did give it a chance until I reach my peak, and then that's it. Like,
see, I know, I hate
certain stuff you're not gonna do. Like we'll go places, and there'll be a pool or something, and I'll tell you straight up, I'm not swimming. Yes, I can swim very well. I can swim, but I'm not getting in the water.
I can't swim, and I don't even bother with that shit.
I can't swim either.
I tried.
Y'all, I'll play music and stuff. Hey, give me the aux cord. I'll play music. Y'all swim, dude. Have fun. I will not interrupt y'all fun, but I'm not gonna be.
What I don't like being with people who. This is why I just don't be doing shit, because people don't know how to leave you the fuck alone. That'd be my thing. You know what I mean? Like I didn't say nothing about your shit. And the thing, and Terrell knows me, I'll be very nice. But if you want to come for me, I turn into a different nigga. Like, so it's just like, so I'll leave you alone. Don't bother me. But like, it annoys me when if I'm reading, nigga, leave me alone. Like, boo, you go reading the books, you think you smart. Like, let's not do this, because then I will be on your head. Then all empathy's gone, my nigga. So let's just not do this. Like, and that's what I don't like when I go out with people. It's just so much like they want. If you want me to be on your shit, like you fucking my vibe up, well, you have your vibe, nigga. I'm just not coming. Because I guess another part is you gotta be cool. Some people are not. I'm not measuring myself. I'm just saying some people do not like being alone very much. I just so happen to have a great gift of being alone. Like, I'm good. But like, I know some people need like that type of connectivity. So I really feel for people who are more social creatures, but still have certain like preferences, but they get ran over by the mob of friends that they have. Like, I really feel for people like that. Like, because they really need those connections. I'm not saying I don't need it either. I'm just saying like I'm a very introverted person. So for people who aren't as introverted, it's got to be tough.
It doesn't take as much to fulfill your need for that connection. It doesn't take as much. Some people, it's like a bottomless pit. So they just constantly give in and do what their friends want so they can try to maintain those connections.
I was like, if Black needs that connection with somebody, he'll call. Like,
so he knows how to get his own needs met, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, he'll call me. He'll call one of our other co-hosts, Shell's Camp, and we'll be on the phone for an hour or two if he needs that connection. Like, I felt that out already. And the dope thing about Black is we'll be doing some stuff that he clearly doesn't want to do. He clearly doesn't want no part. We'll sit there, be smoking, drinking, talking bullshit, playing music that he doesn't like, and he'll still engage us in conversation when we, address him, or if something piques his, if something piques him or whatever. But he's not taking part in this, even though I peer pressure him all the time.
But it's one thing if it's done in fun and friendship versus like actual pressure.
I've been trying to get this nigga to take a shot with me for years.
I'll sit right there. I have no problem being in a room full of smoke and everything. Like, I've been in a room full of all kinds of crazy shit.
He just won't
partake. But I'm probably just there. Like, I'm not like, I'm a witness at best, and I don't even want to be that. Like, if some shit goes down, I'm not a witness, right? But it's just like I'm just there, but I'm not about to be,
But the dope part is he's not judgmental about it. He's not.
I mean, people got to do what they got to do, right? Like, niggas got to get their shit off. Like, I'm not knocking it. I'm not one of them people, even though I don't smoke or drink, I'm not one of them niggas that's like, this is a poison. And I'm like, man, do you? It's your liver, nigga. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, do what you got to do. I don't give a shit. Like,
also, policing people is never necessary, and it says more about you than it does anybody else. Like, why are you policing the shit everybody else?
Thank you.
I could take care of myself. You could take care of yourself. This don't work for you. That's cool. That's fine. You shared the information you wanted to share. You bye. Like, why are you still in my face? Mario said, if I'm by the way, Mario is one of our champagne sharks. If I'm going somewhere that I may or may not like, I make sure I drive so I can bounce if need be. I'm not being stuck with folks anymore. And that is me. That's why I like to drive. I learned a lot of shit the hard way. And back when there was no Uber, right? So I like to drive. And also people, they want to leave, now they can go. Like there's Uber now. I don't gotta take you home if that's the case. You know, if you just
I drive because maybe I want to stay.
Exactly. I want to I like driving. I'm one of those people who just actually enjoys driving, but you know, I like to be able to be in control of my own destiny. And if that don't work for you, that's cool. Take your own car. You know, that's fine too.
Yeah, I don't
care.
I rarely ride with niggas, and if I am, it's like, because there's a story where I hate to put somebody on blast. I'm not gonna say this person's name, but I was on this long drive, on this long ride. Terrell know what I'm talking about, with somebody, and like, you know, the person can be a bit they just have the ability to suck the air out of the room. And so it's like we were on a long drive, and I at the time was like injured to a point that I actually couldn't drive because I hate sitting in the passenger seat anyway. So I was stuck with this person, and we got back to Nap, and we had an extra hour to make somewhere else. And instead of me sitting in the car, I was like, "Yo, just drop me off at somebody's crib, and they'll take me another hour to where I needed to be," because I just didn't want to. I couldn't deal.
You like drop me off?
Straight up, I didn't even tell him. I was just like, "Yo, drop me off." And it was one of our co-hosts. I was like, "Drop me off at Shells." I don't even want to. Because I just couldn't. But the energy in the car was so like vapid. Like,
you have to protect your energy. Like that's just the reality of it. And that's I have learned to be responsible for my own energy and my own space and all that shit. Mario said, you and he are alike, Black. So he said you guys are like.
I ain't trying to get trapped nowhere.
What that means, though, Mario, is next time they're on, you got to be on too. That's what that means. So I'll let you know when that is. Apparently, people like the crossover shit.
Yeah, we don't really get to do it as much because we can't because we're very specific. We can't just like invite a lot of people on unless they're gonna read all the shit we gotta read to get on the show. So it's nice to do this because we don't get to. And we're kind of like nobody, so we just be like, we won't really be on. I mean, like I tweet, but I don't tweet that much. Terrell don't be talking about shit. Like we're not the people that's like going in on like whatever the topic of the day is, like whatever the news is. Like I'll have like one tweet for it, but I'm usually just liking and retweeting all the people I think are much smarter than me. So I don't have much to say. So we don't have the same presence as like other people, and that's no shot at those. I listen to some of those shows. I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying like it's just different.
Entertainment.
Yeah,
it is what it is. But I appreciate you guys both for joining me here on Champagne Sharks. You guys are really dope. I knew y'all was gonna be dope. You know, I just knew. It's like I understand energy right away. So the first day we did the podcast, I knew. Look, they on point. I fuck with them. And then having you guys on here and then letting everyone see you guys on here and see that y'all, like I said, some real ass niggas as opposed to like some cornballs gonna break some myths. You know, like that's not what y'all doing.
Yo, real quick. Do not call us Mythbusters. I hate that shit. People be saying that shit. Like, stop calling. We're not Black Mythbusters. That is not what we do. I hate that shit. Like, do not say that. Like, especially old heads will say that, and I know they mean well, but it'd be like, don't say that shit. It's like when people call me Two instead of Black. Like, don't do that. It's like, what up, Two? Like, don't do that shit.
Who the hell called you Two?
People have done it, and I have to correct this. And they be like, I be like, yo, man, you can call me Black, call me Too Black. Don't call me Two. Like, it just defeats the whole point. You know what I mean?
That just sounds so weird.
Yeah, it's just, so it's just like, we're not Black Mythbusters. I don't have any deep reason as to why I hate that shit. I just hate it. It just feels corny.
Well, because we're not doing physics or science as like the show.
And it's just like this. It's just not how we move. Like, I've had people like, man, y'all can do better than myth busting. I've had somebody say that to me, and I'm like, we don't really look at it like that. And we don't, if you listen to the show, we don't approach it like today. We're, featuring Terrell, the Black Myth. Like, we don't even do that shit.
No, so because you know why? Because you're not like, but Mythbusters is like a nerd show. Like, I mean, it's a fine show. I'm not shitting on the show, but it's like more of a, you know, soulless nerd, overly contrived shit, right? You guys are soulful, real ass niggas talking real ass shit with coming with understanding of the people who might believe the myths and actually trying to dismantle something that's bigger than even just the myth. Is what has the myth produced, right?
Right.
So that's what I appreciate you guys for. I appreciate your show for. Yes, T, you did miss it. He asked if we did the cult talk? Kinda, but not really. A little bit. You should have been here. You could have facilitated that. But it's cool. They're gonna be on again. Yeah, y'all gonna join us again?
Someday, sure. It
doesn't have to be everybody at the same time. It could just be one of y'all. It's just whenever anybody got time, you want to stream with us, we're down.
Cool.
All right, you guys have a great evening. I want you guys to close out by telling them where they can find you, find your podcast, and maybe find you on social media or any other things you want to make sure that they know before you head out.
Yeah, Terrell's better at this than me, but I'll do it. But you can find us on Twitter at Black Miss.
I'll say your personal stuff.
What my shit?
Yeah, your stuff.
I mean, 2_black_ on Twitter, 2_black on Instagram, 2black on Facebook. I don't fuck with anything else, so you're not gonna find me there. I'm not on, not Twitch, but I don't even know what the other shit is called. I'm showing my age at this point, but like I'm not on any of that shit. So, 2black.net if you're looking, to hit me up for poetry or whatever. And yeah, that's essentially it. If you want to do the Black Miss Pod stuff, is that what you're doing? Okay.
So you can find us Black Miss Podcast, just the Black Miss Podcast or Black Miss Podcast. You can search us on Twitter, Facebook, Spotify, all the streaming platforms, YouTube. We are actively working to get that situated. We also have a Patreon, the Black Miss Podcast Patreon. You can follow me, Blue Exodus, on Twitter, Terrell260 on Instagram, Terrell. I don't want to drop my last name on Facebook.
Yeah, I keep putting my name out there.
Nigga named Terrell.
I do. I named this dude like so many times, and I don't mean to, but like when I'm conversating with Black, it's like, yo, that's my nigga. So,
Mario, it's purple. It's always purple. He asked if there was blue in my hair. It's always purple hair. I don't like to be affiliated when I'm not affiliated, so I'm not wearing blue. But I have
the most I get is like just having my little chain on.
What'd you say?
I said, well, you said I don't like to be affiliated. When I was like, most I have on is like my little chain. I have a single bracelet. That's about it.
We're not going to speak on affiliations like that. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I wasn't even speaking on that affiliation. I was actually speaking on the fact that I live in the 60s. But
I'm sorry.
No, they know. It's not a secret. But at any rate, I want to just thank you guys for joining us here on Champagne Sharks. I look forward to having all of you or one of you or both of you or everyone else again. For those of you guys who are listening or watching, please make sure that you like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you're on Twitch, sub and subscribe, buy a subscription for someone. Also on YouTube, here, subscribe and share that. Share the show. Share it with people so they can subscribe. You can find us on Venmo or Cash App under Champagne Sharks. PayPal, champagnesharks@gmail.com. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/Champagne Sharks. If you want to find us, literally Champagne Sharks. T is a fucking genius, and realize if you do something as random as Champagne Sharks, everyone's gonna be able to find you easily. So shout out to T for that. Thank you again, everybody. I appreciate you. You guys have a great and wonderful rest of your weekend.